Welcome to the High Energy Judaism podcast. My name is Mendy Levertov.
My name is Gilad Bogner, and we are very excited to bring on for the very first time our first guest. Introduce yourself.
Jeff Albaum, longtime listener, first-time caller. Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Thank you for being here. First-time caller. That's awesome.
That brings me back to when I was a kid in the car listening to all the calling in shows. It was very popular. Back in the 60s when I was a child, it was crazy.
It's making a comeback.
Yourself.
It's making a comeback.
It is, and and it's weird.
I enjoy it. I think that it makes people are so used to seeing things that just being able to be stupid on the phone for a second and like audible comedy. It's such a it's a lost thing. Before there were comedy specials. There were comedy albums, all these people, they would release a CD or a vinyl of their comedy. Eddie Murphy was releasing vinyls of his comedy. It's a lost, nobody's releasing albums. They're releasing specials where you can watch them.
Right. The sound only thing is cool.
Yeah.
Although nowadays I've seen a lot of the call-in shows are all with the video. Their person responding is on video because at the end of the day we're ADD. Sadly.
Yeah, we need someone, which is why we also are in. I'm talking about audio, but technically we did incorporate video into it. So I'm.
I think that's good. I think when you're listening to a podcast and you want to see people's reactions and understand what do their facial expressions look like, I think that's really important. It adds another dimension and layer.
It says in the Talmud. It says in the Talmud that if you see somebody when they teach, it helps you understand. I forget the exact who. I think it was Rabbi Meir. Where they say that one of the students, maybe it was Rabbi Yoshua, Rabbi Meir, I don't remember. Someone's going to text me after this and say exactly who it was. But basically, there was one student who would sit in front of him and he would teach and he would sit directly across. Another one would sit behind. It says the one that sat behind didn't understood a third of what the person in front. Because when you see someone's facial expression, it's not just the facial expression that allows them to understand. There's also certain transmission that comes from your face. When you face somebody, there's a certain an energetic flow that is non-verbal and just visual and just
same case can be made for the get off the dating apps chant. It's you're gonna
I haven't been on the dating apps for many years, by the way.
No, yeah, I my mistake. I was thinking about the other Rabbi Mendy. No,
right.
It's but
have you swiped right on him? I'll let him know.
Not yet. If I come across though, it's an immediate, right? But the idea of your first engagement with someone is going to be based on what they look like in still images, probably on their better side, and then you're going to be interacting with them without audio and without facial expressions. Literally, if you're texting, it's so backwards.
We tell people, and Jeff, I want to hear how you did it with your dating experience. It wasn't that long ago. We suggest people, whether they're religious or not religious, we suggest people not to text as much as possible. I mean, it's in today's world. When I dated Mussy, it was a long time ago by today's standards, and we texted a little bit here and there, but we had a policy as much as possible to get on the phone and talk to each other, because you try to be cutesy, you're trying to be smart and funny and there's a little joke and a little cynical, and all you need is one of those to fall flat. It can really upend the situation. You're like, that was a weird comment. What was that? But it was meant as a cutesy little thing. Today's world's a little more, very much stronger text based. I text as many people as I can. I do not want to talk on the phone. The people that I don't want to talk to. Or not that I don't want to talk to. I'd rather, if it's a short thing, it's much faster through text than it is if it's a call. Hello, how are you? What's going on? No one knows how to get on the phone for 2 seconds. So,
but that's why voice notes are so helpful. Especially on WhatsApp. Everyone uses voice notes and it's the best. It's so nice because it's the best of both worlds.
I love voice notes.
I'm the king of voice notes.
But Mendy, before we started recording, you were telling us about the kinus.
Yes. Oh, okay.
All your best friends in town.
So we hosted, for context, we hosted the Chabad Young Professionals rabbis of the entire country. It's called the International Kinus. I don't know if we had anyone actually from out of country this time. but it is we've done this, the new thing, generally speaking, the Kinnos is the Chabad Rabbis Convention, and it's done in New York. And that's like the one that happens in November. Then they have these like mini niche ones that work for like campus ones have one, and then different regions have one. Different demographics have one. Houston hosted one for the rabbis who work in hospitals because they have a massive Ashel house there that hosts, people who are going through situations, can recover in this like basically a hotel, a free hotel. It's an incredible concept. So the Chabad Young Professional Network, which is all the Chabad Young Professional rabbis who work with young professionals, whether they're called CYP or YJP, or there's other names, the Shul, there's a bunch of different places. So that in the last couple of years, they've started moving the Kinnos around to dedicated centers that are only for young professionals, if possible. So 2 years ago, we did it in New Jersey. It was kind of a fluke because they wanted to do it somewhere not in Crown Heights. They're like, what's the closest place? Oh, there's a Chabad house. Let's do it. It wasn't a policy. After it was done, we're like, we actually really loved going to one of our colleagues' Chabad houses. This is amazing. So the next year, they spoke to Raleigh, and he just finished buying and renovating. So he's like, okay, we went to him, and I went there last summer, and it was amazing. And I thought to myself at the time, like, if we're ready, we want to bring it to Austin, baby. So
little did you know,
November, we were mostly ready. In November, we already had stuff going on in the Chai house. So I spoke to the organizers, and I said, let's bring it to Austin, which we did this past week.
And how many people came? So
about 100 rabbis plus like support staff, like the caterer and the servers and the people from the from the main office that are like coming to show us different like the Meta Chabad thing, that's how it's working and how good it is, etc. And it was trippy because these are people that I talk to all the time. We talk shop, but they didn't come to talk shop. It really reflects the space. Like in other kinnoses that we've had, they have been a little more technical, a little more like how are we going to grow. And here it was just a vibe. It was such a vibe. We were inside.
What was the concept? What were you doing day to day?
It was 2 days. Okay, so what did we do? We had a session that I pioneered. Well, first we studied. We learned together, which is I think one of the first times that we've done this as an official like start to the kinnos where everyone sat down with Torah books and studied together for like an hour. It was incredible. Then we did an unconference, which I don't know if you've heard of this idea, where it's basically it's like we don't really know what you want to talk about. We're sure you're all smart people and super capable. You decide what you want to talk about. We have big posters on the walls, and then you walk up and you write down what you want to present about or what you want to hear about, and then you write your name under it, and then people kind of split up, and it's basically just like this mishmash pool of everyone walking around and being like, what's your favorite? Like, okay, this corner we're going to talk about, I spoke about having volunteer committees, because here in YJP we have a ton of committees, and everyone's super dialed in, which is, Gilad's our programming committee chair, which is incredible. And Jeff, you were on both the business one and on the First Fridays ones throughout your long and storied career of YJP. But we really haven't. Not a lot of Chabad houses have this level of planning volunteers and committees, right? We have a lot of people like, we need to deliver matzah to people. Here you go. But in Austin, we're going to have an event, and our community is going to decide. Our community is going to decide real decisions about when and where and how and what. So I spoke about that. Across the room, another rabbi was talking about building up your Chai Club. How do you get more monthly donors? It's a young professional community that not everyone can give serious financial support. All Chabads are independent. We have to self-fund through fundraising. So one of the ways that's very useful, very strong, is have a deeply committed community monthly Chai Club where people are giving monthly. So he spoke about that because he has like 150 people in his Chai Club, or maybe 200 people in his Chai Club. We're just like, I didn't even ask him. I just announced he's going to talk about it, and he's like, "What?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're friends.
So
we're friends."
You've known these people for your entire life, presumably, right? Like,
No.
These are all some of your
No.
friends. No.
I even met a few people now.
Really?
They're in Chabad, but Chabad is big.
For sure, but I feel isn't everyone in like a WhatsApp group or something?
So we're in a WhatsApp group. I'm pretty vocal, but not everyone is. That's because I talk a lot.
It was actually
Never
a question
stop.
I had, and I saw I saw the photos, and I was wondering, like, like you get a big enough group of anybody together, even if everybody's a genius, you're gonna have averages. So we're like that group of people who were kind of like too cool for school and they weren't participating, and the people who were like super like rah rah and everywhere in between.
Everything. But as a host, I went around and tried to like pull people in and be like, checking in with people. How you doing? How's it going? I did a tour of the Chai house like probably 40 times. Because everyone was like, oh, like, what is this place? I said, come on a tour with me. Come. I did very personal tours, 2-3 people at a time. And initially I thought, like, maybe I was speaking to one of the coordinators. I was like, should we do like a group tour? How do we do it? And he's like, you're probably going to enjoy it. I know you. You're just going to love doing small tours. And he's right. Because everyone gets to have that personal, like, I said the same thing on every tour probably, right? But people have specific questions. How you do this? How you do that? How'd you figure out what's the mortgage split? How much did you put down? These are rentals, the offices we have for rent. Oh, how many do you have filled? It's more or less the same question, but the idea that people like, it was really fun. I don't know, maybe I'm just a very extroverted person, especially in this setting. But one of the things that, to answer your question specifically, we discovered as we were going through the event over the course of the day. So we had this open session, and we had one of the halachic rabbis who does answer a lot of questions for young professional rabbis. He's in the world, he knows it very well. We flew him in, he spoke, he fabringed, so he spoke first in the afternoon, gave like a halachic lecture for 2 hours, going through different issues and things that we should think about, and like guidance and direction. Then we had a dinner, like a banquet type dinner, and then all these sessions were closed door sessions, which is why I really wanted our community to benefit from it. I was like, how do I bring people in? And they're closed door sessions. We can't. They're not meant to be open to the public. So I was like, whatever. Like I was that's the only part of it that I would like try to figure out if I were to do this again, a way to make it better. But so we had to bring until 4 a.m. Obviously. I mean, it wasn't one Fabringen. It was one main Fabringen and one side Fabringen, and the secret Fabringen in Office D. Like, multiple places. And then we had the outside Fabringen until it started raining. That outside Fabringen moved onto the awning. Whatever, it was chaos. And then, not chaos. I keep saying chaos, and mostly doesn't like when I use the word chaos, because chaos sounds bad. So it was energetic.
It was good chaos.
It was amazing. Yeah. The next day we had workshop, like heavy, like working workshops kind of thing. We were talking about, what are the challenges that are currently facing the community. What are the tools that we have available, ideas on how to do things, a little bit of study, more teaching stuff, and then it was 4 o'clock. Lunch, 4 o'clock, and everyone bounced.
Wow.
And literally, the place went from being like 100 rabbis to 2. And they both had like 5 a.m. flights, and they were wiped because the level of interaction, you're just so deeply involved. Basically, everyone crashed. Mussi flew in, so I went with Mussi, like we went around, and then it was the next day, and we flew out. Crazy. Yeah, really amazing.
I do have an idea as to why
so cool.
You were so excited to show people around. I don't know whose quote this is, and I'm definitely not getting it right, but there are very few things that are like, we talk about pride and it can have a negative or a positive connotation. Obviously, midat hagava in Hebrew is something that we don't look on as something very positive, because it's pride in the negative sense. It's condescending. It's it's because of me, as opposed to because of him. And there's a positive connotation to gava, meaning something that you're proud of the outcome, or that you're proud of an achievement, and while you can thank the help of Hashem or the causation by Hashem, you can also be proud of the part that you took in it. And one of the causations for the positive connotation of pride would be exceeding internal expectations, meaning you've outdone yourself. You didn't know you could do so well. There's exceeding external expectations, meaning providing a better result to whoever, like an actual physical result to whoever you were trying to provide it to, and acts of charity. And I think that the Chai House hits the 3, because I think that you guys like beforehand weren't dreaming as big as the reality would end up being. The community got way more than they had initially thought that they were getting. And I think that this is the biggest act of charity. The service that you provide to the community is in itself, your job is a charitable job. And now you've expanded how much charity you can be giving the community and how much time the community could be spending in the sacred place. And finally, you have a group of like 40 or how like you said,
almost
400 people. So 100
Almost
people
100, yeah.
who understand how incredible this is because they're also trying to emulate and they can learn so much from it. And you showing them is also an act of charity because they can now learn from like what worked. Like I think it's just like the midat hagava here is such a positive thing. And obviously Hakaba, he's very much involved and he's very much overlooking, but I think that there is room for the positive kind of pride.
Positive pride, yeah. Interesting. And I think also I don't think it's a lot of, I think it's hard work that made it happen, but I don't think it was like, this is my opinion, I don't think it was unique specifically to me personally, right? Like, I think that if you put a rabbi in Austin, Texas with this kind of a community, with this kind of support, in my opinion, they should be able to pull this similar to this, if not even better. You know what I'm saying? Like, I know that I've an easygoing personality, but like, I think
it's both. I don't think you need to take anything away from you, and I think it's both. Like, I think it is the community is amazing, and you and Mussy are amazing, and like,
thank you.
That's it.
As my ex would say,
crushed it.
I understand it. You're wrong, but I understand what you're saying. I think it's very much. That's
good.
That was one of her favorites. She's like, "Yeah, I get it. You're wrong, but I get it."
But it was so amazing, and also a lot of my friends are like, it's just everyone's in a different stage and place, so you try very much not to be overly, no one's judging anyone else. People are coming to learn. A lot of people are trying to figure out how to do it. People are a little bit behind, a little bit ahead. In other words, people are as rabbis, as long as we've had a community, everyone has their own trajectory in life and how things got up to where they're up to. It was interesting. And also some of the people there were like people who had mentored me 10 years ago when I first started out. I called them 1,000 times with questions. And now I'm like, you heard all the inside garbage of like how the difficulties and the internal stuff and the internal struggles and the external struggles, and now you're like, you see it. What do you think? And I'm doing the same thing for the next generation. Like, I have people who were talking, like, the first text that I got, people on the flight back are texting me questions that they have. So how big is the room? How many donors did it take? How much work, how much time did it take to get the place? How do you do the committees again? Are can you put together a document, just like a play-by-play? How do you find the staffing? Because we have great staff, really, really good staff. The producers and Kevin, construction, he's incredible. So it's like, they're like, where do we get a Kevin? And I'm like, sorry, we don't have any extras. I really apologize.
Yeah.
But it was really good. It was really, really like, everything was amazing. Anyways, I'm on a high from it still. It's been 3 days and I haven't come down from it. So I might stick around for a while. It's great.
Good.
So that's that.
So we're about to start book number 5. After starting at book number 4, we're gonna Star Wars it. We started at episode 4. We're gonna go to episode 5, and because there is no episode 6, we're gonna go to episode 1 after that. So we started with the book of Numbers, Sefer Bamidbar. We just finished Mas'eh. When you're listening to this podcast, previous Shabbat, we will have listened to Mas'eh, which is the final parsha in Sefer Bamidbar. And we're about to start a very unique book where we change the tone a bit, where Bamidbar and Shmot, which are not right after the other, are a lot of stories, and Bereshit, Genesis, Exodus, and Numbers are very story-heavy. And Leviticus and Deuteronomy, Vayikra and Devarim are a little bit different, and they're also different from each other. I did a little bit of homework. I feel like so proud of myself. I did a little bit of homework in preparation because we talked about in one of our Parsha's last book about this 38-year jump. And in this book, it's actually as if time is standing still. Like, Devarim is pretty much compiled, an entire book compiled of a few speeches that Moses gives to the people, if I'm not mistaken, correct? Welcome.
We have a visitor. It took 12 episodes to get a visitor.
Not bad.
He's like, hello. Avram.
Oh, it's a nice
Hello.
haircut. It's a
I'm
nice
actually impressed
haircut.
it took this long. Mwah.
Very, very, very nice. Welcome.
What's going on?
What's your name? What's your name? Is it Avram?
Yeah.
Avram? Okay, you can go play now. Yeah, go play. Lock kids here.
This,
You like to see it?
this, and this.
Yeah, this is Jeff. This is Gilad. You see them?
Mm.
You know them.
Oh, I saw you like 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. Yeah, it's me.
I saw you when you were in the hot place.
In the hot
Before you
place.
went to the less hot place.
Yeah, you want seltzer? Okay, you want to take it out of the room? This is high energy.
This is very high.
I wish
energy.
everyone should have at least one Avramo.
Can you open the door?
I would, I'll open the door for you, Maziz. Sure. Love it.
I'm leaving it in. I'm leaving it in. This was perfect.
Of course. Come on, there you go. Okay, that costed me a seltzer, but I also locked the door now, so we're good.
All right.
Amazing.
So I was asking you about so it's basically a compilation of about 2 to 3 speeches that Moses addresses the people. That's the entire book, right? Like time practically stands still in this book.
5 weeks.
5 weeks as opposed to 38 years in the previous book.
Correct.
And so that means in 5 weeks we're going to finish the Torah.
No,
It means-
Can't be too simple.
Go ahead.
it means that over the course of the next, I think it's like 10 or 11 weeks that we have 10 or 11 parshas in this one. So it's 10 or 11 weeks. We're going to be reading a storyline that happens over the course of 5 weeks.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So in 11 weeks or 10 weeks or something,
11
then
weeks.
we're going to be finishing the Torah
11 weeks.
for this year.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
It's 11 parshiot, which doesn't translate into 11 weeks. It ges messed up a little
Of
bit.
course not.
Well,
There's
how
a
could it?
doubling.
Why-
Yeah.
How could it? So first of all, there's 2 doublings, more than 2 doublings. What you need to have, so this is actually a great way to. We've clarified it a little bit before. We're going to clarify it again. The Jewish calendar is built. The Torah reading system is built basically at this general concept, which is we're going to finish the entire Torah in the course of a year, right? We're going to restart the Torah every single year after high holiday season ends. The first Shabbat after Simchat Torah, we read the entire book, the entire portion of Bereshit, which is the first portion of the Torah. Yeah? Simple and easy. Then we have to finish it by the time we reach the next Simchat Torah. What happens over the course of the year is there's two general changes that can cause or that complicate the situation, and there's 2 smaller changes. The 2 general changes is it a leap year or not a leap year? Which means we need to come up with 4 extra weeks, or in English, we don't combine 4 weeks. And the other thing that we need to factor for is if a holiday falls out on a Shabbat, then we do a holiday reading instead of a Shabbat reading. So it doesn't count towards the yearly cycle. So,
Okay.
yeah.
So
But there's
every
still no
year
skipping.
You're reading a different.
Again?
Every year you're reading the Torah in kind of a, not in the same order, but it's in different combinations. Yeah.
So the short answer is slightly, very slightly. No, what I mean to say is it's not any random 2 parashiyot that can be combined. For example, the book of Genesis has no combinations. There's no doublings at all. It's later on, and in fact, there's a whole world of commentary that gets into the conversation. Why are these 2 the ones that are combined? Would it not make sense to combine a different 2? For example, last Parsha, I was in Austin, Texas, reading the Torah, and it is the longest, by far the longest combined. They're both long Parashiot, Matot and Maseh are both very long, and they were combined. It was like, I don't know, insane. It was just long, and it's hard to read, and I don't know the Parsha very well, so I was going a little slower. It was just, I was wiped by the time we were done, and it was just like, it was regular Shabbos. And so the 2 things that change up the thing is the year leap year, and the question of the holidays, when the holidays fall out on Shabbat. For example, I'll give you an example that makes it very simple. High holidays, you may not have realized this throughout the past years, but there's a rhythm to them, in the sense that the days of the week that Rosh Hashanah falls out is the same 2 days of the week that Sukkot will be, and the same 2 days that Shmini Ateret and Simchat Torah will be. So if Rosh Hashanah is on a Monday and a Tuesday, then Sukkot will be on a Monday and a Tuesday, and Simchat Torah will be on a Monday and a Tuesday. If Rosh Hashanah is on a Saturday and a Sunday, a Shabbat and a Sunday, then Sukkot will be on a Saturday and a Sunday, and Shmini Ateret and Simchat Torah will be on a Saturday and a Sunday.
Meaning there will be more bunchings.
Which means you're going to have more bunchings to be able to reach the end of, because Rosh Hashanah killed a week, or replaced a week, and Sukkot replaces a week. And also don't forget that if it's if the holidays, 2 holidays in the year fall out, have longer holidays, by definition they're going to replace a holiday, because both Pesach and Sukkot are over a week. They definitely go over a Saturday, over a Shabbos. Mm-hmm. So they're for sure going to replace. So those are factored in. There's 2 general things that we say that we have to have. Is you want to have the rebuke at the end of the book of Leviticus. You want that to always be before we get the Torah, but not right before. So it's either going to be 2 weeks or 1 week before Shavuot.
Before we get the
before Shavuot.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
And the same thing with there's a rebuke at the end of the Torah here, that we also want it to be before Rosh Hashanah, but not the week right before. So Nitzavim is always the week before Rosh Hashanah, no matter what. Either Nitzavim is conjoined with Vayelech, or it's not. But either way, Nitzavim is always the Shabbos before Rosh Hashanah. Guaranteed. So now that you have like these 3 major rules, now you can start moving around and be like, okay, so now, we have a month, and also some months have 5 weeks, some months have 4 weeks, right? Depending on when things start. So you have like these little tweaks that need to be tweaked.
So you have 3 anchors throughout the year of the reading, and then kind of everything else in between you can mix and match.
Well, if I understand the system correctly, it's not that there's a modern high court of rabbis deciding what kind of year it's going to be. It's that long ago rabbis mapped out that there would be, if I'm not mistaken, 19 kinds of years.
Yes.
So 19 kinds of years, which is by the way, your English and your Hebrew birthday will sync up every 19 years. They will be the same day every 19 years.
Unless your name is Mendy Levertov, in which if it's synced,
and we were born in the evening. It synced up in the 11th.
You're also.
I was born in the evening, so it syncs up not on the 19th year, but every 19 years. So not on my 19th birthday.
No, it synced up in my 11th year. It synced up in my 11th year and my 19th year.
And your 19th. That's very unique. That's very unique.
See, I knew it was special.
You are special. So, but like long ago, the rabbis identified that there were going to be only 19 kinds of years, and there are certain days that holidays can and cannot come out on. We know this, fall out on. So, like my dad has a ring that he wears all the time. That's menorah lit with only 5 candles, and the reason is because he knew that the 5th day of Hanukkah cannot come out on Shabbat ever. It will never come out on Shabbat, and therefore that was the day that he would kind of like mark off every year in the calendar to have our non-religious relatives over to celebrate Hanukkah, so that they wouldn't drive on Shabbat.
Brilliant.
So, like, my dad has a ring like that, that he wears, and I actually was thinking about it this week that I want to get a ring like that too. So that's just to show that there are there are days of the year that certain holidays and certain days of holidays can't come out on, meaning there's a limited option to like what the Hebrew calendar can look like. And therefore, long ago, the Sanhedrin were like, all right, we mapped it out. There's 19 kinds of years. If it's this kind of year, all right, let's find the one in the 19. That's the one. That's what it's going to be this year. And they mapped out what that would look like for a long time.
Why?
Because there's no Sanhedrin anymore.
So what do they do?
Because there's no one body that can decide for everyone anymore. So when there was, they decided for...
Take it a step further. How did we make the calendar back in the day?
You had witnesses who would see the Gilui. You had witnesses who would see the exposure of the moon, meaning when you can start counting the beginning and end
the new moon. They would see the new moon, right?
Yeah, which would mean that that the actual Rosh Chodesh is over. The Rosh Chodesh is over because when you see the Gilui of the Nolad,
starts.
Yeah,
right.
when you see the start, that means that Rosh Chodesh is over.
Rosh Chodesh started.
No, Rosh Chodesh.
Well, not
happens
numbers.
when
It's
there's no
the
moon.
night of Rosh Chodesh. Tonight is the night of Rosh Chodesh. Meaning the sun and the moon come together in the sky, and then there's nothing. That's zero. And then
That's
you begin.
That's Rosh Chodesh.
No, that's the end of the Rosh Chodesh. And then either it lasts another, like, depending on how it falls out, the rotations kind of line up or don't line up, and then suddenly you have a sliver of a new moon. That sliver is only visible for about 15 to 20 minutes after sunset because the moon and the sun are so close to each other. Right? When they're fully matched up, then they set at the same time. Then the moon moves off, and you can see a sliver, but it's right behind the sun. So the sun sets, and then for about 15, 20 minutes you can see the new moon, and then that sets too. If you see the new sliver, then tonight is the new month. Today's 1. Tomorrow's 2 and 3 and 4. Tonight is 1. No, this night and the next day is 1, and then 2 and 3. If we don't see it, then today is 30.
Yes.
Let's say it's a Sunday night, right? Sunday night, everyone's like, "Is it Rosh Chodesh or not?" We don't know. There's witnesses out. It's like fireworks, but with no fireworks. And then they're like out there, and everyone's looking around, and then 2 witnesses see. I think I see the sliver, and they're looking, and now it could also just be a cloud. You have to be careful, right? It could just be. You could also be high on something, and you're seeing moons, but there's like 5 of them, and in the wrong direction, right?
God forbid.
Okay, so wait, even if they see the sliver, what does that mean?
So then they would go to the high court, and they would say, "We saw the sliver tonight," which means tonight, Sunday night, which is Monday in the Jewish calendar, meaning because we start the day from as soon as the sun sets, the new day starts. It's not a midnight start; it's an evening start. It's a sunset start, like Shabbat. Right?
Mm-hmm.
When is Shabbat is the 7th day of the week that we celebrate. When do we start? Friday night. We're all celebrating Shabbat. Because the 7th day begins with sunset on the 6th.
Interesting. I don't think I knew that. I didn't realize that.
I think we've discussed this possibly.
On the
Probably.
podcast.
The same questions.
In this context of this kind of conversation, like this conversation of the days.
Oh.
So
Yeah.
so that's why Shabbat starts the night. Rosh Hashanah. Everyone's like Rosh Hashanah Eve. What does Eve mean?
Mm-hmm.
Theoretically, in the secular calendar, it's like midnight of Rosh Hashanah starts the new year. No, like that's January 1st. But on the Jewish calendar, it's the sunset going down on the 29th day of the last month of the year, New Year.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Vayi
So
erev,
Sunday night,
vayi boker yom echad.
In the Bible.
That's like from Genesis. That's like when we're talking about the new days, as we're saying God created the world in days. The first day He created this, and each time it says vayi erev, vayi boker yom echad, and then it was night, and then it was day, and then it was one, and then it was night, and then it was morning, and then it was one day. And that's one of the ways that we in Judaism interpret. Okay, so we look at it starting at the night.
So if 2 witnesses see the moon on Sunday night, which is Monday, then Monday is day 1 of the new month.
Mm-hmm.
If they don't see it,
And
then
Rosh Chodesh is
Monday is the 30th, and Tuesday is day 1.
Okay.
And
But you started to say, how do they do that? How do they do that now in today's day?
1 second. So then they would go to the court, and the way they would work, they would go to the court, and the court would say, "What did you see?" And they say what they saw. And if they say they were facing the west, if they say they were facing the east, then they were just high on something. They were hallucinating. If they say they were facing, I don't know, it was 3 hours after the sun went down and they saw the moon, it's like you couldn't, physically impossible. And there were also times that by astrological phenomena, you couldn't see the moon. Recently, there was a controversy that Saudi Arabia, which is the official Muslim decision maker about Ramadan or something or other, announced some sort of Muslim thing based on where the moon is. And all the astronomers ran the numbers, and they're like, from Saudi Arabia, it was impossible to see the moon on that night. Just if you're looking at sight lines and the curvature of the earth and all this stuff, it was impossible to see it. Now, in Jewish law, we know that. Like, we know there are certain, like, Maimonides spends 12 chapters talking about what if you're in this part. Like, if you're, one of his things he says, like, if you're in Israel and you see the moon, then you'll know that everyone west of you can possible for them to see it, but east of you, almost impossible for them to see it if it's above a certain height, past sunset. So he like goes like he knows angles of visual, he knows trigonometry, he knows all these things. My mind is 1,000 years ago, very basic stuff. fast, very, very interesting. So they would come to the court and they would say what they saw, and the court would say, okay, today is a new month, and then the next month would be the same thing, and every month they would do it. And sometimes the court would say, let's say it was cloudy for 3 months in the winter, right? So the court says it's obvious the moon, the months are this. They see the moon during the middle of the month, and they're like, that's a full moon. That's the 15th. They understand how it fits with the rest of the months. So the court could also decide, without having people having seen where the moon is, they could say, based on our calculations, this is the new month. It's the 29th day. We're going to have a 29-day month, even though we didn't have people see it, but we know that it has to be 29 days. Mm-hmm. So they had a mathematical system on how to do it. But the key was that the court is the one who was mikadesh. They made it holy, whether it was by saying it's holy because they had people who they saw, or because they internally made a calculation. They said, this is going to be the new month. This is the day. It wasn't automatic that it went for 30 days. Sometimes it was 29, sometimes it was 30. But the court was the one who decided, and once the court decides, that's how it becomes real. There was a man, a holy man, a righteous man named Hillel. Not the Hillel you're thinking about. His great-great-great-great-grandson. And I think I missed a few greats there. And he looks at the situation politically. And he says the way that we make a month properly done is through a court. The court is going to disappear. They had already moved, I think, once, maybe twice, and it was getting to a point where he says politically, at some point, our overseers, the Roman government, are going to disband the court. How are we going to have real months for the rest of history if the court is gone? This is the Sanhedrin, and if it's because of a political thing like this, we're talking about a situation that unless we have some massive political change, we're never going to get Sanhedrin back. Like, eventually we'll get it back, but it's like, what does it take to do it? And by the way, he was right. We're 2,000 years later, we still don't have a Sanhedrin. So he's not wrong. So what did he do? As Gilad said, they ran the numbers. They constructed a calendar, a bulletproof calendar. If you go to the book, the Code of Jewish Law, they don't have a calendar. They have a list of all the years with teeny formulas. The first day of the year is going to be on Shabbat, Zion, 7. It's going to be a year, there are 2 months in the middle of the year, Tishrei and Cheshvan, that have the amount of days in that month change. Some years it's 29 and 30, some years it's 29, 29, and some years it's 30 and 30. If it's 29 and 30, then it means that the year is going Kisidran, it's going in order. If they're both 29, it's Chaser, it's missing. If they're both 30, it's Shalem, it's full, it's a very full year, it has an extra day. So these are 3 different days. Then you have also the leap year. So they have a little formula that tells you these 3 things. The first day of Rosh Hashanah, is it Chaser, Shalem, or Kisidran? Is it 29, 30, 30, 30, 29, 29? And the first day of Pesach, which tells you if it's a leap year or not. Those 3 things. Once you have those 3 codes, you can make a listing on a single piece of paper. A listing of every year from the day that he stood, him and his Beit Din, after they made the mathematical formula, they sat down and they made all of these Rosh Chodeshes holy through the power of their Beit Din. And they went straight until the year 6000.
What's the difference between the Sanhedrin and the Beit Din?
A Beit Din is any 3 people, or depending what. It could be any 3 people, it could be 3 qualified people, 3 qualified rabbis that have smicha, 3 qualified judges. There's every single type of Jewish law that needs to be decided is certain people. It's always based on knowledge, but sometimes there's a certain level of certification or a certain level of gravitas. The Sanhedrin is 71 people. It's modeled after Moses and his 70 elders, which we discussed in Bamidbar earlier, a couple of weeks ago, where it talks about how Moses passed on the prophecy.
The Sanhedrin was like the highest court in the land, so to speak.
And it was not so to speak. It was.
It was, right.
Not only that, it was if you think about it, I think we spoke about it when we talk about America versus the Americans, how America and Israel are very similar, is that Avram noch kenn ich jetzt is that the Sanhedrin was both the legislature and it was the judiciary. The Sanhedrin was one who, when someone was brought to a capital case, a capital punishment, they would also go to the Sanhedrin, they would judge it. Now, some court cases could be tried. Some capital punishments could be tried within 23 people. 23 person Beit Din, not a regular person. It has to be a heavy Beit Din for a capital punishment. But Sanhedrin was the one that only Sanhedrin could educate certain ones. Like if there's a sage who was found to be, heretical and counter whatever. Or if, there's other ones where the Sanhedrin needed to have specifically the Sanhedrin.
And what period, like how long was the Sanhedrin operating for before they were exiled, disbanded, before the Romans came?
Your question is how many years before the end of the Second Temple was the Sanhedrin ended? When was it stopped?
Because that
was the cutoff.
I want to say it was 100 years before, but it could be I'm wrong. Could be it was less than.
The end was 100 years before. They were operating for a long
it ran
time.
from Moses all the way through.
Got it.
So 1,000 years, give or take. Yeah. So the Sanhedrin was so Hillel and his Sanhedrin were the ones who went ahead and made every single. So when we celebrate Rosh Chodesh today, what makes that day Rosh Chodesh? Hillel and his Beit Din 2,000 years ago. Right?
Very interesting.
It's one of those little things
I
that
also
you don't
wanna point
realize. It's not just that like we have a tradition, but the power of the tradition is 2,000 years old. Meaning from a Jewish legal ritual perspective, the things that we are doing today is not just to commemorate Rosh Chodesh. I want to keep a Jewish calendar. It makes me feel... No. The way that Rosh Chodesh was established every single month for 1,000 years of Jewish history, that same formula, spiritual formula, is what is making Rosh Chodesh the Rosh Chodesh that we have today. He did a mass... I don't even know how it was done. It doesn't say, and maybe it does, and I just don't know this. I don't know if they read off every single Rosh Chodesh, and then collectively the Beit Din said, holy. The next one, holy. Or if they did a mass one, right? Because that's 6,000, not 6,000. It's 2,000 years times 12. That's 12,000. It's a long time. I don't know if they read it off.
I also want to point
batch.
out there's something very interesting about the fact that we're getting pretty close. He did it for around 2,000 extra years, and we're at 5,700. What are we at? Atash.
So why is it end of the year 6,000?
Mashiach?
Wait, can we explain this? Because this is really interesting. I learned this somewhat recently. What's the significance of the 6,000?
No.
So I don't know what the significance of the 6,000 is, but it's interesting that in the Jewish calendar we're at year Tashpa, so it's
5786.
5786. So we're less than 200. We're less than 250 years away. We're 213 and 14 years out. Yeah.
But is it the 6,000? That's when the Jewish calendar stops? There's some sort of end as it relates to 6,000, right? And who decided that? Where does that come from?
The Medrash. Medrash speaks about it. Kabbalah speaks about it. At the year 6,000, the world is split up into zones. There's 2,000 years of chaos, 2,000 years of Torah, 2,000 years of Mashiach. So, for example, 2,000 years of chaos ends with Abraham. 2,000 years of Torah starts with the giving of the Torah. And 2,000 years of Mashiach ends with Mashiach coming. That's a Medrash. And when Hillel...
Isn't there a gap already there, though, between Abraham and the Torah?
No, Abraham was born in the year 1948.
Oh, wait, what?
He's born in the year 1948 on the Jewish calendar.
That's very interesting. For those who don't know,
you like that.
The founding of the state of Israel. Yeah, I like that a lot.
You like that,
For those who don't know, yeah.
So 1948 is the year he's born, and he lives for 170 years. What's 1948 plus 170? 170, yeah. 2,000 something.
I took a guess. I don't
Give or take. I don't know. 1948 plus 100 years is 2048. There you go. You're already crossed into the next 1,000 years.
Interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
Explain the 1948 thing. I still don't get that. What do you mean he was born?
He was born. So we understand, the Jewish understanding is that the world was created 5,786 years ago.
Right. So that's 0.
That's 0.
That's 0.
Okay.
So Abraham was born 1,948 years after that.
After. Got it. Okay.
Which I find fascinating. If the world's only 5,786 years old, and we burned 1,900 years on nothing, what was going on for 1,900 years?
No, it's not
Meaning
that
the
nothing.
Jewish
We have
story
some
doesn't
good
start-
stories. We have some good stories till
Not
then.
really. What do we have?
Well, the creation of the world. Yeah,
Adam and
like
Eve?
Yeah, Adam and Eve. Keep going.
Noach,
No,
Flood?
Chanoch,
that's Noach. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're 2.
Chanoch.
Keep going.
I like
Something about a whale?
they're
No,
incredible.
the whale's way after.
No, that's not then. The whale is way later. Way later.
Thing. What else? Tower of Babel.
No, but it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
4 major stories. I'm not saying
they're
it was a bad
great
idea.
stories.
I just think it's funny. I know it's great stories. Now contrast that with, let's see, from when
It's exponential. It
Moses
starts
is
slow and then
born.
really-
No, we have dead zones afterwards. By the way, I'm fascinated with dead zones in Jewish history. It's one of the things
We
that
just
really
we just
intrigue me.
talked about one. We just talked about one of a 38-year dead zone. It's not 1940.
Right,
It's
right
a 38-year dead zone.
in the desert.
Also,
Nothing
like
happens.
I just finished reading Sefer Melachim.
Okay.
The amount of times where it talks about a king who ruled for 30 or 40 or 41 or 51 years, and that's all it says about him, is like it's half the book. Half the book is, and he ruled for 41 years, and then he died and rest with his fathers. Next.
Right. But you have sometimes like a 200-year situation where very little is known. If we know that things happened, like we know who they are and what they said, but we don't have like a very strong, robust cultural experience. We don't know songs that tie back to then. Like for example, Tehillim, the book of Psalms that we have, is basically, in addition to everything else, it's a songbook. Like it's holy and it's spiritual and it's powerful and it's poems and it's spiritual poems, and then we have like, I'm sure they were composing music or they were composing maybe sad poetry after the temple was destroyed. But for like, I think, I don't know what exactly it is. After the Talmud is closed in the year 500, I think we have a little bit of a gap where there isn't much cultural stuff. We barely know the names of the Rabbanan Savaroi, who were the sages between the closing of the Talmud and, let's say, Rambam, Rashi, those people, those sages. There's a gap where we have, I forget exactly, it's 200, 300 years, something along those lines, where basically we have some names, we have some people, we know a little bit of the stories. They don't really talk about how they dressed. They're basically like continuing the Talmud, essentially. Like they're like in the vibe of the Talmud, and they're not formally commentary yet. They're like preserved the Talmud and kept it going. Called Rabbanan Savaroi and the Gaonim. And there's a few, and we have a little bit of, like, we don't have any they don't have any documents. There's no books, or very few books from the Gaonim. Maybe one. Shiltis maybe. There's like 1 or 2 books from the Gaonim, but besides for that, we don't have tons of books. We know a lot about the Gaonim from their students or their students' students.
What year?
500 to what's 1,000 years ago? 1,000 years ago. Now we're in 2000 on the Goyish calendar. We're on 2026. So 1026. So let's say a little bit before that, 200 years before that, 800. So between the year 500 and 800, and I'm being very generous of how much the kind of the dead zone is, so to speak. It's really a lot less than that, because once you start looking into it, Rashi was a little more, and we know Rashi's teachers already, and we know a lot about their lives.
And in the secular calendar, what year did Rashi live? The 1200s?
950 years ago. So run the numbers. 1100.
1100. Okay, pretty close.
Yeah. So yeah, you're good. You're very good. So Rashi lives then, and we know Rashi's teachers, and we know Rashi lives in France. We know there were yeshivas in France, and we're talking here about the transitionary period between when the bulk of Jewish infrastructure was still being shared with Babylonia, but a lot of it had already begun to transfer to North Africa, to more Spain. There's the Spanish Golden Era, which is like 400 years long, where the Jews really had a robust. So that overlapped with the beginning of Rashi's period. Rashi was in France, while Spain was going well. There's Shmuel HaNagid, which is one of the great sages of Spain. But for example, just to get into a contextual example, the end of the Mishnaic period which is when Rabbi Akiva was alive and when he was killed by the Romans. We
This was
know
approximately when?
this
This
is
was right
the year
before
100.
the Gemara, right? This is right before the
This is
Gemara.
the year 100. He was killed right after the destruction of the first temple, of the second temple. The second temple was destroyed in the year 70, 69 or 70, depending on how you start the year 0. So in the year 60 or 70, he was still alive. He was killed after that. That zone, that time period, destruction of the second temple, we know Rabbi Akiva, we know colleagues, students, teachers, we know what they ate, we know how they slept, we know what kind of houses lived, we know the shape of their ovens, we know everything. We know everything about them. We know what their cultural, we know how they dealt with because the Mishnah was written. And the Talmud, which is commenting on that, is expounding on those stories. There were less than, there was like 100, 200, 300 years before that. They still had a lot of the memory. And there's a bunch of different master books, the Sifri, the Sifra, the Midrash. They're all being written at the same time. So we have a huge amount of, first of all, texts written by these sages. Rabbi Shimon, who's Rabbi Akiva's student, Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Tarfon, colleagues, student colleagues, teacher colleagues. Like the whole bulk of like Jewish knowledge, a lot of it comes from these like 50 rabbis that we know that were all around the same time. Mm-hmm. We have stories of interpolitical contentiousness within the sages themselves. Some were more strict. Some wanted to have stronger safeguards on the academies. Some wanted to open the academies. Anyone can come study. Some said no. You have to be somebody who's authentic. Not hypocritical. You have to be somebody who's really serious inside. You can't just let everybody in. The next sage says, no, let everybody in. We know that. We know other political stuff. Beit Shammai, Beit Hillel had arguments. How do we come to the conclusion? Who the Jewish law is like? All of this we know, and they were all alive. Like I said, in like 100-ish years, you have tons and tons and tons of stories and narratives. We know about their socioeconomical status. We know how there were poor people who were incredibly poor. We know the rich people, how fantastically rich they were. By the way, wealth inequality was a real thing then as well. We had people, in the time of the destruction of the second temple, there's a woman who went out of her house. They were starving. She was incredibly wealthy. And she went out of the house, and because it was of the situation in Israel, the famine and the thing, she had to walk on the ground, on the actual dirt, in her own bare feet. Usually when she walked, wherever she walked, she had slaves and servants who would put out a carpet wherever she walked, and they would roll it up behind her. Right? Sadly, it was such a terrible, dismal time that she was starving at home. They had gold and silver, but they couldn't. And she sent the slave out, or servant, I should say, out to the marketplace and said, "Buy us some flour." And he goes out and says, "There's no more white flour. There's only whole wheat flour, brown flour." And she says, "So buy us brown flour." So he runs out and he comes back and says, "There was no more brown flour, only barley." And she's like, "Idiot, just buy us something." And basically, every time he comes back and forth, he comes back, They didn't have what I wanted. There was something more inferior, and he was afraid to buy it without asking her first. And basically, at some point, she realizes she's just going to go out to the marketplace and buy whatever's available. She walks out on the dirt, on her own feet.
Can't imagine.
And she stepped basically on a rotted piece of, or a disgusting piece of fruit. And she stepped on it, and it grows her out so badly that basically it caused her to become ill, and she dies like 2 days later. Like, it revolted her. She was so couldn't handle the fact that she stepped on this, I don't remember what exactly it was she stepped on. It was gross. And that's the high level wealth. And then you have people like Rabbi Mendy, who his daughter buys, and again, it's not exactly the same time period, but it's very similar. Rabbi Mendy's daughter buys oil, buys vinegar instead of buying oil for Shabbat candles. And she's embarrassed to tell her father, and she's weeping. It's 5 minutes before Shabbos. They don't have any money. And she can't light Shabbat candles because she bought the wrong thing. She bought vinegar. How are you going to light Shabbat candles? And so Rabbi Mendy comes in. He sees her crying. He's about to head out to synagogue. And he looks at her and says, "What's wrong, my daughter?" And she says, "We're not going to have Shabbat candles tonight." He's like, "What happened?" He said, I accidentally bought vinegar instead of oil. So we don't have money to... And Shabbos is starting in a few minutes, and I can't borrow. I'm too bad. We can't do this. I don't know what to do. He looks at her and he says, the same God who said oil you should burn, can tell vinegar you should burn. She lights the Shabbos candles, and they burn. Isn't that incredible?
Stunning.
But think about the
stunning.
level of poverty on this side, and wealth on the other side. There was inequality. Well, we know all of this stuff, and we have these beautiful, powerful stories of impoverished Jews, impoverished sages. I mean, Rabbi Mendy does have a whole bunch of stories about specifically dealing with poverty and struggling through life. He's an incredible sage, but he has beautiful stories. Part of the stories are beautiful because he was, because he was working through terrible poverty, and we know all of this. And then we have immediately post the Talmud. We know the broad strokes of the picture, where the Jews lived and where their communities were, and where in Babylonia, where the yeshivas were. We know all of that, but we don't have stories. We don't have music. We don't have no art. Like, there's very little that we have from that time period. And they're finding more here and there. They're piecing it together slowly. I think today versus 100 years ago, you have a lot more, because we've started to piece together from the information of sages who came afterwards. We say, oh, if this sage says that his teacher lived like this, then that means that's how probably some Jews lived like that. So now we have a little more information. So they're finding stuff. So it's interesting. But yeah, there are dead zones in Jewish history.
Wow. Okay, but how does this tie into the Parsha?
I was just going to say, we're 56 and a half minutes in, and we haven't
So I was gonna say, as you brought this up, this parsha is going to be very different. I think that it's going to be an exploration of how we're going to do this, because the Torah portion now shifts into a much more theological reading, and learning the parsha without going into the text itself is going to be a challenge. I think we're going to do more thematic conversations rather than do stories and narratives. Like, if you go back to my favorite Torah portion was Chukat, there's 10 stories that nobody knew and nobody heard of before. Even I forgot how amazing the Torah portion was until I looked at it before. I try to prepare before these things. I should not come out, just totally random stuff. But I looked at the Torah portion. I was like, wow, I forgot. We have this and this and this and this and this. So many stories, amazing, right? Dvarim is different. You're not going to have stories like that.
So there's a couple, because I actually also I inadvertently prepared. I read a little bit of the Parsha before, and so it's basically, this is the layman's version, I guess, but it's basically just a summary of the fourth book, right? It's just like a high level overview of what happened in the desert, right? And it's just like Moshe telling it, but it's interesting because there's a couple points that I remember very differently. Like, there's a couple points where he says things, and I'm like, wait, that's not how it happened. And so I definitely had questions around those specifically. But one of the themes that that was brought up in the calls on earlier was this idea of what's Moshe doing? Is Moshe being a parent who's factually stating something to a child, of being like, you did these things, there's consequences, devoid of emotion? Or is he complaining to a group of people who have done their more than fair share of complaining back to him, right? So that was a theme that we were exploring earlier. So I'm curious both of your thoughts and what the thoughts are on that.
I think there's a few questions to be asked. Question number one is, first of all, to point out, you said it's book 5 is the overview of book 4. It's also the overview of book 3 and 2.
Sure.
So it's most of the Torah is being repeated. The book that the name that we use for Deuteronomy, which is the secular name and the rabbinic name, is Mishneh Torah, or I'll translate that into Latin for you, Deuteronomy, which means second Torah, the second repetition of the Torah. So he's repeating the Torah. A few things that are interesting. There are a few laws that are mentioned in Deuteronomy that are entirely new, that were not mentioned before. I don't have the list off the top of my head. You can look this up. Thank God for the things that will tell you the truth and the things that will hallucinate. You can look it up in multiple places. But it will. There's some things that are repeated with entirely new things, and there are some things that are repeated with new laws, and they're explicated in certain ways. That's number one. Number two, the benefit of having Moshe tell us the story of everything is to help us understand He's preparing the Jewish people to go into the land of Israel and to live a life which is not miraculous anymore.
Mm-hmm.
So he's teaching them and giving them the foundational faith of Judaism. And to me, the whole book of Deuteronomy is a very powerful philosophical book. Like if you say, oh, where do I find out the philosophy of Judaism? You're not going to find it as much in the first 4 books of the Torah. You'll find things, which is what the Torah mostly does. Will tell you a story, and based on the story, you'll understand this is very important. For example, the beauty and the value of the land of Israel, right? It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah you must love the land of Israel. But it tells you a story of Tzlafchad and him passing away and his 5 daughters who fought with Moses to get their own piece of land. And the whole story is very, very positive about these girls. That's telling you that they had a very, very strong affinity for Israel because that's a Jewish value, that you should love Eretz Yisrael and you should want to be part of it, support it. It's very important. In Deuteronomy, you have more of this linear, direct Moshe telling the people things that he talks about. We have in the 10 Commandments as I am God, your God, who took you out of Egypt. There shall have no other gods besides for me. Moshe is the one who tells us there is nothing else besides for God. There's only one God.
Mm-hmm.
Hashem hu elikim b'shamayim imav v'aretz mitachat ein. There's one God. He is the only one. Heavens above and on the earth and the waters below. There's only one divine being. Who says it? Moses says it. Here. You are the people that God has given a charge to elevate the world and go out into the world. Where do we hear that? We hear it here. And you're going to love it. You probably remember this from last year. The Shema is here. Moses is the one who tells them, yes. The Shema is here.
Okay.
The Hayayim Shema, the 2nd chapter of the Shema, is here.
In this parsha or in this book?
In this book. So the Shema itself, let me just double check to be 100% factual. It's in Parashat Devarim, which is next week. Or next Torah portion, I should say. I don't know what week you're listening to this. No, it depends.
Also, because what year of the 19 are we in? We got to do the whole flow.
Right.
There you go.
Is it conjoined? Is it not conjoined?
I'm looking for it now to make sure that I have it proper. There it is, yeah. Next week's Torah portion. 6th reading.
Okay.
Lord our God, the Lord is one. So first of all, and there's a lot of narrative. What is the revelation? Moshe goes through what happened at the revelation of Mount Sinai. He goes to the 10 Commandments, which, by the way, the 10 Commandments that he tells us here is different than the 10 Commandments he tells us last week. Last in Exodus. There's tweaks. One of the explanations is you have to understand. So this actually is a great way to get into the kind of the general conversation of what is happening. So in addition to this general idea of like Moshe is going to tell us what to do, and by the way, a few things that as we're going to get through the parashiyot, the different weeks, there's different emphasis on different things. Moshe is telling the Jewish people you have to fear God. The idea that a lot of Hasidic teachings really come up in this book first. The idea of loving God, the idea of fearing God. These are moral things. These are Hasidic things that they first show up in Devarim, in this book.
So can we talk about fear for a second? Because that was a theme that I found interesting, of like fear versus awe, right? Because I've heard it both ways, like but also love. Like in talking about God, you're supposed to, I forget the exact language, but you're supposed to love him, fear him, and be in awe of him, kind of all at the same time, right? So when you say fear, just then, is that fear in the sense of I'm frightened, or is it in that divine awesomeness in the true sense of awe?
What is fear?
I think like an instinctual response. Like I feel afraid of things instinctually. Like I'm afraid of snakes. If I see a snake, I like tense up and I run away, and I want to like be in a different area, right? But yeah, it's a tightening. But it's automatic. I don't think about it.
It's a retreating away
Response.
from. It's a retreating away from.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's creating a distance.
Mm-hmm.
What is love?
Closing the
opposite.
distance.
Of a coming close. The manifestation of love, a lot of times, is a hug. Of bringing close. Right? That could be platonic, it could be romantic, it could be whatever you want, but it's a hug. And sometimes love, depending on the relationship, it isn't even a physical hug, but it's the idea I want to spend time with you. Which is a coming close. In the case of ice cream, it's I want you to be inside me, and I'm going to eat it. Right? But it's not, that's different. It's just pleasure. It's a whole different story. But love, it's very different. But love is bringing close. I want to be close. I want to be near. I want to be connected. It's kind of like I mentioned that bringing my friends to Austin. To me, it was a joy because I love my friends. I love the community, and I want us to be together in the space, and we can be with each other and hang out and talk, spend time, meeting of minds for bringing together. That's what love is. Fear is a verb essentially of pushing or separation, creating separation, pushing away, pulling away. It's the same concept. Just the question is how are you activating it. The motivation for that can be multiple types of motivation.
Fear.
Or in other words, fear can come with a dose of hatred. Fear can come with a dose of I'm afraid it's going to hurt me. Right? That is not as elevated as to your language of awe. Awe is much more elevated. It's the same result. The result of fear, raw fear of a snake, is get this away from me. I want to move away from it. I don't want to be anywhere near it. Like it's going to hurt me. It's going to bite me. It's going to kill me. There are people who love to hold snakes.
Yeah.
But that's also because they know which ones are poisonous, the ones which aren't. They don't feel creeped out by it. They don't feel grossed by it. Whatever, right? But if you don't know, or if you have a bad experience in your history, or for some reason you think snakes are terrible, so then you see a snake instinctually, but it's not instinctually because your child doesn't know to be afraid of snakes until you tell them to, right? Interesting. Not every emotion we think is instinctual actually is instinctual. We have to train kids to be afraid of fire. And sometimes it's by letting them get a little too close. Not like in the fire, but they should feel what that feels like when it gets a little hot. And then they know instinctually their body and your mind work together to say that's going to hurt you, don't touch it.
Right.
But it's just pushing away. Now with God or with anyone great, right? And the example that I like to think of this for myself, and when I speak to you guys, think of a person in your world, in your industry, that they're like head and shoulders above you in the skill sets that you aspire to be at. What is your reaction when you see them? Let's say you're sitting and maybe if they walked into your room, obviously they're here to see you, so it's different. But let's say you're in a quasi-public space and they're there. Do you run over and say hello, or are you first and then overcome that and I feel it comes from a respect of the distance, how great this person is, how powerful they are. And it could be on a scale of Gilad is in music. It could be something which is Tony Robbins for those who like him. Some people hate him, but if you like him and you think he's amazing at what he does, and you see him in the street, it's a little bit of it's not just this fan thing. It's it's my idol. Wow, it's so amazing. The reason the person is your idol is because you have something you respect about them. It's not just they're famous. There's something you look at them and you're wow, I wish I had that. Or imagine if I could even be something small compared to that person. So you have an awe, you have a respect. Now, and the greater that person is, either at that skill set or in general in life. Obviously you have some mentors who are very specific. There are some musicians, for example, that are great in music and terribly immoral people. So when you look at them in the music lens, you're wow. When you look at the moral lens, you're please also stay away. But that's because I'm afraid of you, not because of my respect.
Rabbi, does Judaism have a point of view on that? If what type of people you're allowed to or encouraged to choose as mentors?
Oh, this is good.
To that exact point.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to look up to someone who is, to take the music example, musically the most gifted person in the world, but morally abhorrent?
I think your choice of language is important. Looking up, learning from. You can learn from anybody. Mikom malamdei iskalti. I learned from everyone that exists, or everyone that taught me. Right? One of the best examples that the Talmud has of this is there was a sage. His name was Acher. He was a great, great sage, and he ends up deciding to reject Judaism. There's a lot of Kabbalistic readings on that. There's philosophical readings, Kabbalistic readings. There are some people who, when they meet me, they only want to talk about Acher. We don't talk about him for like 3 weeks, and then we talk about him again in a different context because he's like super exciting for them, which is funny. But
I was just speaking about him with Shmuley out here.
yeah, people love Acher because he was this great, great sage, and then but he doesn't just disappear. He doesn't like reject Judaism and disappear. He rejects Judaism and hangs out with the guys. He comes in and out, and he had a student, Rabbi Meir, who really loved him, and Rabbi Meir would learn from him. And even though, like for example, one example is that I was on Shabbos and they were walking the Acher. His name was Elisha ben Avuya. So Elisha ben Avuya is sitting on a horse, which rabbinically forbidden on Shabbos, not biblically but rabbinically, and they are walking together. Rabbi Meir is on the ground, and Elisha ben Avuya is sitting on this horse, and as they're walking kind of off, in the fields. And at some point, Elisha tells Rabbi Meir, he says, turn back. I was mentally counting the steps of the horse as we were going, and we've reached the edge of the limit of how distant you're allowed to travel on Shabbat without it being considered a journey. So we've reached the border of kind of in town. And if you go past the space, you're out of town. He doesn't say, I'll see you later. I'm going, but you go back. And so Rabbi Meir says to him, you too turn back. He says, I tried, but my path of teshuvah, my path of repentance has been closed from in front of me. I've been banned from God. And he has a whole story, which is fascinating. But the fact that Rabbi Meir was studying from him is because, and it's not so simple, because there is an idea of saying, if you're not smart enough or brilliant enough, you can't discern that well, right? You think you're the most brilliant person in the world, you're going to go study. But if you're studying something specific, like music, like in business, business or whatever it is, sales or business business, building businesses or leadership or things like that, there is an idea of being able to go into studying, learning from somebody, and being able to separate the chaff from the wheat. And you take the wheat and you leave behind the extra. That makes sense. However, looking up to, that's a very different word, very different meaning. And for that, Maimonides tells us that if you want to look up to somebody and make them into a mentor or mentor-like, they have to be similar to a Malach Hashem Tzvaot. They have to look like God's angel. So to you, they have to be on the level of God's angel. Perfect-ish. Now, obviously, every human is not perfect, right? We know people.
Totally.
So it's within reason. Don't be an idiot. But this idea of saying that everyone you learn from has to be perfect, no. But the people that you look up to, yes.
I was going to also mention regarding that you had talked about me kol melamdai eskalti, from everyone who has taught to me, I have learned and I have grown smarter. But there's also a very famous concept in Judaism, kach lecharav, which is have a person, aseh lecharav, have one person who you go to for the advice about your spiritual world. Which also in Judaism spreads out into all of your worlds, your household world, your financial world, your belief world, every world. And there's this big concept about aseh lecharav, which is you can't have a situation where if you don't like the answer from the guy who you're usually going to for questions, you just go to the guy who's right next to him. There's a very unique thing in Judaism about a hierarchical, not in authority, but in ideas.
A mentor.
Yeah, a mentor. It's if you have this guy, stick with this guy, even if you don't like his answers. If you've decided he's your guy, this is your guy, and this is how we maintain the integrity of a community and a strand of Judaism. I also want to go back and touch on something that I think that I have a feeling.
By the way, I'm going to point out. I just want to close the loop on aseh lecharav. The Rebbe pointed that out to be a very powerful thing in the 40s. It was very the 80s, pushed very strongly that men should have, it's not just you say, if he's great or not, women should have women mentors, men should have men mentors, but you should, every single person should have a mentor. It's a very, very big deal in Chabad. It's like standard policy. You try to have a mentor. Now, sometimes, to your point, Gilad, you need to have a mentor that is unique specifically to something that you're like a specific niche that you need to deal with. But then that could be just the person you talk to. Then you have a mentor you talk to, and you see, find out what they think about what this other person said, etc. Go ahead. What were you saying?
So this is something that I have a feeling you're going to like my interpretation of, and this is going back to the whole love versus fear. And this is something that we talk about on a lot of the podcasts, which is the paradox that is the idea of Hashem or God in Judaism, which is the dissonance between the finite and the infinite, where love is infinite. It is something that is not bound. Love, when we say unconditional love, we're saying the same word twice. You don't love someone because. You love someone, period. And you might be angry at them because, and you may be happy with them because, but you love them, period. And usually your anger or pleasure with them is expressed because of your love. On the contrary, fear is very finite. It's defined. It's not that I'm scared. It's I'm scared that. I'm scared that my life will be lost. I'm scared that my money will be lost. I'm scared that this relationship will be lost. I'm scared that I will be lost. And therefore, it's a very defined term, whereas love is such like this broad umbrella. We call it in in the hippie circles, it's called like an umbrella value, because when you want to act out of a certain value, you want to act out of joy, and people say don't choose love because it's so big that you can't define everything that you're going to do, whether it's positive or negative, is going to be out of love. If you hate someone, it's out of love because you want more for them, you want them to be better. If you honk at someone on the street and say drive better, it's because you believe they can drive better and you expect of them to drive better and to be more caring to society. Whereas in fear, there's an end to it. I'm scared of because of. I'm scared of the lightning storm because my crops will be soaked and I won't be able to harvest on time this year, and then it'll affect my finances. And that can go all the way down to like my being and the pyramid and Maslow's pyramid of needs. But like that's, I think, the exact beauty of the dissonance and the paradox between the finite and the infinite. Back to you, Rabbi Mendy.
But you're gonna. But I have to push back on that because I think not push back, not to push back. I'm gonna add a layer there. You're right. You're right. And love is based out of self. Or another way to say this: does love say I exist, or does love say I don't exist?
Define
not where it comes from and not where it's going to. The entire package. What is love saying?
It's saying that I exist.
And fear?
I'm scared of not existing.
It's saying that I exist, but it's in a certain sense it comes from a non-existence. It's a pushing away. It's a negation of self, a negation of it's I don't want to be involved. I don't want to be engaged. In the broader sense, it could be related to a notness. Even what is fear? What does love do? Love leads to expansiveness. It leads to expression of self. It leads to being more exuberant, more out there, extroversion. Fear is negation of self. You crawl into a hole, curl up like a fetus, and cry for a couple hours, right? It's not extroversion, it's introversion. It's hiding. There is what to add to your hierarchy of love and fear. Fear, very low. Love is above that. Above that is a deeper love, a love of transcendence, and above that is a fear of transcendence. The highest level is fear as well, because it comes from the infinity of God. When you're faced with true infinity, a human can't do anything but run away. The lower level of that, being faced with true infinity, is that you want to be included in it. So that love would be a love of, please include me in this. Suck me up, beam me up, Scotty, and put me in your cloud. The highest level is that I don't exist anymore. Which is really, maybe it's a love to get to that fear. Like the children of Aaron, they go into the Holy of Holies, they want to die. They want their souls to go back to God. Is that a love or is that a fear? It sits in a very weird space between the two. It's a love of God that leads to them saying, please kill me. Or not kill, please kill me. Please take me. Take me home.
Take me back.
Take me back. It's a very weird concept.
It is.
Where does fear within love sit in this? So like, I guess the example would be like something that you love to do but are afraid of. You are afraid for your kids because
you love them.
Scary, whatever, because you love them. Where does that fear?
So we talk about the 10 Sefirot always having nested energies, right? We believe it's 7 times 7 or 10 times 10, right?
What is that?
You have the Sefirot, generally speaking, are the powers and energies that are within a human soul. How we connect with the world and how we interact with the world is broken, generally speaking, into 2 major groups. There's the intellect, the way we think of things, and then the result of that is the emotional relationship with things. In the emotional, you also have 3 groups, really, if we're being really, really honest. You have the internal emotional energies, you have the executive leadership functionings, or executive functioning, and then you have leadership, which is 3 more and more outside of you. What you feel about things, I love things, I hate things, it's very personal and internal. Then you have overcoming either stubbornness or overcoming external challenges, communication. These are all executive functions. You have people who are overflowing with love and compassion, very creative, and they have a very difficult time with executive function because their chesed, gvura, and tiferet are doing well, but their netzach hod yesod are not doing well. It's very different worlds, even though you would think that somebody who's super extroverted, why do they have a hard time picking up a phone? Or why do they have a hard time getting stuff done? It's because it's a different column of the 7 Sefirot. And the last one is Malchut, which is leadership and speaking things out to people. It's a very short version, a way of saying it. Everything in Judaism we understand as being 7 because it is related to the 7 emotional energies. God has 7 emotional energies in the way that he creates the world. He created humanity with the same 7 energies. So that way we should match him and be able to understand when God interacts with the world, we can understand that for ourselves. Really, it's 10. God has 10 energies. Like I said, it's the 3 intellect, 7 emotion, right? Mm-hmm. So there's 3 intellect, 7 emotion, it's a 10. That's why a minion is 10. That's why all math is 10 based. It just makes sense. It's how it is, obviously, right? So obvious.
Clearly.
And God creates humanity in the image of God, because God wants us to have this ability that we can. It didn't have to be this way, right? If you think about it, if God's the ultimate alien to us concept, completely out of this world, why would anything that God relates to the world be anything similar to how we would relate to ourselves or relate to each other? It doesn't have to be that way. Think about sci-fi, right? Aliens who speak without words, people communicate without thinking. Things that just are. Time isn't linear. For these if you ever read sci-fi, it's very interesting to see like a completely different conceptualization of what reality looks like on these other planets, these other dimensions, right? And yet we say, oh, if we have 10 Sefirot, we have 3 ways of thinking of things and 7 emotions, probably God has that. Who decided? Because God created us. This is what in Genesis it says, God creates us in his image. It was not a physical image, but it was a way that anything that we learn in Kabbalah about the way that God interacts with the world, or with the way that God interacts within his own spiritual dimensions, translates into our lives, and vice versa. Anything that we learn about ourselves will translate into a way that we can connect to God, a relationship. And the way that we relate to our spouses and to our friends is a lesson for how we can relate to God. And the way that God relates to us teaches us how to relate to our spouses and our friends and our kids. It's a gift. It's a gift that God gave us, that he put us in his image. And it's incredibly powerful, because then you hear like, oh, chesed comes first, then comes gvura in the hierarchy of 7, which means chesed is love and kindness. Gvura is discipline and strength. When you're relating to your kids, when you're relating to your workers, when you're your employees, when you're relating to your children, when you're relating to your wife. Chesed first, then gvura. Not the other way around. Don't criticize. First compliment. Basic things that in modern society we're like, we discovered this, do a sandwich, do a compliment sandwich. Like, yes, it's in the Kabbalah. Chesed, gvura, tiferet. It's very obvious. But like, these ideas it's fascinating, right? So you have the 7, and by the way, the 7 days of the week is from the 7 Sefirot, the 7 years of the Shemitah, the resting cycle of land, of agriculture in Israel. Also 7 years. Everything is 7. We wrap our hands. When you wrap tefillin, you put 7 straps on your arm. Same thing.
Not 8.
It's 7, and it's 4 and 2 and then 2 halves. If you look at it from one side, from here, you'll see 7.
Yeah.
If you look at it from the inside, you'll see 7. You'll never see. It's like me and Gilad were never in the same room at the same time. Maybe we're the same person. You never know, right? This is just we record twice, right? But you have these things like you never see it on the same side. It's 7 and 7. So everything is 7. How do we get into this? Chesed, we're talking about love and being nested love. So we understand that 7, every single one of the sefirot, and this is every single one of the sefirot are nested from each other. Meaning Chesed is going to have 7 sub-sefirot, which means 7 things that manifest out of love. It manifests in 7 unique, specific ways. And the same thing with discipline or this severity energy. Energy of severity can manifest in 7 different ways. For example, the most basic and obvious example is taking a knife or a dangerous tool away from someone or child specifically that you love.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It comes from chesed, it comes from the love, it's ahava, it's love, but it manifests in the real world as something which the kid cries and screams and bangs on the floor. Big tears coming out of their eyes, right? Weeping. But it's love. It's pure love. The only reason that you care, because you see your neighbor's kid doing it, you're just like to your neighbor, you're like texting me, okay, by the way, your kid's running around with an AR-47. What do you think? So
Interesting.
Yeah.
We speak about this a lot, where the manifestation of chesed and gvura are often both intertwined and actually opposite. Like, and I don't know if you agree with me 100% on this, but I often say to you that I believe that chesed and gvura are the precursors to yin and yang, and like the manifestation of the masculine and the feminine, where often you actually see, especially in a relationship, especially when it comes to raising kids, you'll usually see the woman who is supposed to be associated with the feminine and the chesed being the actual lioness of the household, and the man being the you know, like the chesed and the compassionate and also just like the absorber. So I think that's it's something that I keep on like stopping with you over, and in our private classes on this podcast, it's probably happened a couple times. It always blows my mind.
Yeah, it is fascinating. Now, all of this was to say, because you were asking the question of our relationship with God and fear and love, and Moses says you have to love God, and Moses says you have to fear God. It's very, very important, etc. Right? Now, what's very interesting, is that essentially what we're saying is that Devarim is about relationships. Having relationships, deep relationships, us with God and also us with each other. The idea of V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha actually exists in Leviticus, but it speaks here in Deuteronomy more. V'ahavta l'reacha kamocha means to love your fellow as yourself. Here in Devarim, we talk about free loans, tzedakah. A lot of those values are explicated. Again, we have stories of Abraham hosting guests, and we have stories of Joseph is forgiving his brothers for what they did to him. Beautiful, wonderful. But where it says specifically, make a tithe and give it to your fellow, and help them with if they're suffering, and make sure that they have what to eat. And here's 3 different mitzvot that are related to charity. Where is all of that? What's coming up in about four Torah portions. So all of that is in Deuteronomy.
So what are we supposed to learn from the fact that there's in some ways a summary of the 4 previous books, and in some ways new stuff?
So your question, let me make your question sharper. Why are we doing it this way? Why can't we just continue in the similar style to the way that Leviticus existed? Leviticus is a book that's also a little bit all over the place. There's stories
Also, why do we
and laws.
Why do we need a fifth book at all? Why can't you just do the story?
Well, how many
put all
fingers
the
do you
stuff
have in
one
your
book?
hand? How many fingers do you have in your hand?
10.
5. 5 and 5. Right? You have 5 on the right and 5 on the left. They're a mirror of each other. Chesed and Gvura, it's 5. Your toes, by the way, if you have those, 5 and 5 as well. Right? 5 on the right, 5 on the left, because Chesed has 5 and Gvura has 5 in your whole body. It just makes sense. It's all part of the same Sefirot.
Wait, but you only have one ear on each side.
Correct? Imagine you had 5 ears. That'd be crazy.
Yeah.
Why do you only have one mouth?
To listen twice as much as you speak.
And because Malchut doesn't fit on the two sides, it's down the middle. Malchut is not from right or left side. It's a middle piece. Anything you have 2 of is because there's a Chesed side and a Gvura side of that thing. There's listening with Chesed, listening with Gvura. Malchut is an idea. Again, it's not just because there is obviously good speaking and bad speaking, but it's one mouth because of one's ideas. It's a center post. It's supposed to be part of everything at center. Your nose even has 2 nostrils, which is strange, but it's in the middle, but it has 2 nostrils. Your eyes, you have 2 of them. Your mouth, you only have 1 of, etc.
Interesting.
Your heart, just a small. This is one of. Where's your heart? Which side?
Middle.
Isn't it centered, but it's tilted?
It's slightly tilted on the left. Why is it tilted on the left?
Tilted left.
Center left.
Chesed.
Why is it center left? Theoretically,
Chesed?
Chesed is your heart represents love. Love should be on the right.
Chesed is on the right. I would imagine that Chesed is on the left.
Chesed is on the right. Chesed is kindness. By the way, that's one of the reasons why in Jewish law there's no such a thing as a lefty. Doesn't exist.
But we have lefties.
If you're left-handed, no, we don't. We have what's called swapped right hands. If you are a left-handed person, Jewish law calls you iter yad yamin, which means you're a swapped right hand. Your right hand is always stronger. Some people, their right hand's on the left side. It's not their fault. Correct. But why is it so interesting? Because according to Kabbalah, Chesed is right. You're telling me that a person who's a lefty is actually a Gvura-dominated person? That's terrible. That's terrible. And in fact, by the way, lefties are very creative. Creativity is a Chesed attribute. It's interesting. So in Jewish law, your right hand's always, the stronger hand's always the right hand. Happens to be it's on the left side. Fine, no problem. Happens.
Okay, so going back to the question, why do we do it this way?
So why do we do it this way? So what's interesting about this Torah, this book entirely, is it is a book that is spoken in the words of Moses' voice.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it spoken in Moses' voice? What is so critical? What is so important about that? So you'll find it's the same reason. It's the same reason that we have a written Torah and an oral Torah. It's the same reason while some mitzvot we say make sense and some mitzvot we say are super irrational, don't make any sense. It's all the same reason.
What's the Hebrew for that? It's like there's certain mitzvahs that you're not supposed to understand.
Chukim,
question or something.
Chukim you don't understand.
Yeah.
Mishpatim are the judgments that we fully understand. We would have made mishpatim if it wouldn't have been for God. Anything that the rabbis established basically as a guard, as a safeguard, those are things that are mishpatim based. If you could come up with the reason for making this into a thing, then it's probably mishpatim. For example, don't steal. Right? It's in the Torah. Do not steal, and but it's also a good thing. And how do you know that? Because most societies have created that as being a bedrock of their societal foundation. You don't have to be specifically spiritual or religious or metaphysically transcendent to be like, just leave everyone else's stuff alone. That's mishpatim. Okay, and then you have some mitzvot that are completely irrational. Irrational meaning super rational. They don't have any logic. A chok means it's like a gzera. It's like a law. It's a big law. That's the same reason. The reason we have those types of mitzvot is the same reason that we have oral Torah, written Torah, which is the same reason why we have this beautiful book of Dvarim, Deuteronomy, written by itself, written in a different language, in Moses' language. When God created the world, God wanted, this is a Kabbalistic truth, it's Kabbalistic teaching. God wanted to elevate the physical world and to make it holy, to become one with God. The language that the Midrash tells us is God had a desire to make the world into a holy dwelling place, a home for him. In the same way that when you're at home, you let your hair down completely and you allow yourself to express yourself. You paint the wall with like some radical color, and you put up the type of decor that you want, and the calendars that you want, and the books and the clothing that you want, how you want it, and you decorate your space and your thing. And also emotionally, you let your hair down. You totally let it relax. Which is why, by the way, when someone is out of the house a whole day, you're exhausted. Why are you so tired? You're so exhausted and tired because every time, the minute you step out over the threshold of your door, you're putting on a show. Not in a bad way, but you're adjusting to the world around you. Whether it's for work, or whether it's for friends, or whether it's the very fact that you made a concession to humanity and put on a pair of pants, you are doing something which is for the rest of the world and not for yourself.
Only on Saturdays.
Right? Yeah. Exactly. But otherwise, you're at home, you're in your own space. And when you're back home, you're able to relax again. And if you stay home a whole day, you won't be as tired from that production type thing. The idea is that God wants the world. And by the way, as a side note, that's why when you go to a conference or on vacation or whatever, until you have your room where you can put your stuff down and say, this is my space for the next day, 2, 3, emotionally, you're not yet settled. You need a place. This is your space that you know you can come back and just say, this is where I am. Right? And that's because humans are tied to time and space. Olam shana nefesh. There's the word ashan, which is smoke, which is a Kabbalistic acronym. Olam is world, shana is year or time, nefesh is human, the soul. The three of them are related to each other. Every mitzvah that we do has a time and space factor. We do it in a time and in a place. Some mitzvahs are by day, some mitzvahs are by night. They have to be on earth. They can't just be anywhere. We are intrinsically tied to space-time. And therefore, we need to have a space that we can say, this is my space, that I can be temporarily. Or long-term. You can rent a house. You can buy a house. Nothing's permanent, but you can have kind of this is my space. God wants to have a space in this world, in the physical world. That God feels fully revealed in a physical world. We speak about the paradox of the infinite and the finite. This is how we are talking about it. We're talking about a different language. It's the same idea. There's an infinite and a finite melding till they become one, where God's essential core essence of infinity is now fully revealed in a world that is limited and broken and complicated and has evil, this world. And it is our job to do that. That is what mitzvot are. Mitzvot are paradoxical moments, creating paradox in every single moment. Now, any time that you're bringing together something which is incredibly, incredibly high with something incredibly, incredibly low, there has to be a merging, a melding of the two. That has to happen. There are ways that it can happen that are on the terms of the upper world, and there's ways that it's on the terms of the lower. Kind of like when you teach something to somebody, and we've all taught people in different things. When you teach someone, if you do all the work, the student doesn't really learn anything. Right? They say, yeah, and then you say, okay, do it. Now you do it. Oh, I'm stuck. Right? But you can't be like, for Gilad's the easiest example, here's the guitar. Good luck. Right? Then they're like, what do I do? You're like, just play, do your thing, practice, and everything will be okay.
I don't know why
like,
it's not working.
You need
I try
skills.
it with all my students. Yeah.
You're like, here, the first 5 sessions are just try it. And you're like, see, now you know you need me. But it's
the sales department.
But it's like, here's a skill. Here, we're gonna do it together. And there's a lot of adjustment back and forth. When I teach people also with Yiddishkeit, it's the same idea, right? You're teaching about Torah, you're teaching something. You don't want to give them the full answer every time. You don't want to explain everything. The goal is not to be this person that they always have to come back for mentors or for teaching. And the same thing goes, Jeff, you talk with people about business stuff. You talk to people and teach people and explain things to people. And sometimes you like just go out and try to get go get a property. Go try make a deal.
Right.
Go do a deal.
Right.
Come back to me when it's not working, and I'll tell you what specifically is the issue.
So, Rabbi, I have a question about that, because I feel like it's actually a big. I think about this a lot as it relates to. I think I have a very different background in Jewish education, obviously, than you and Gilad too. But I feel like this is the biggest like own goal in Jewish education, like. Because I hear what you're saying, and I agree 1,000% with what you're saying. But the idea of like, you should know how to study Jewishly. Like, I've heard that so many times. I have no idea how to study Jewishly, right? Or like I think you always talk about like there's like you're meditating on it, it's spiritual, and I love that idea, and I have no idea how to do it. You know, so like. I don't really know what to do with that, but
You're asking how do you do that as an adult with a limited amount of time? How do you get that skill? I've been thinking about that as well. Because the way that we do it in yeshiva as a kid, and the way that it's basically, it's not like they sit down and teach you a skill, how to learn Jewishly. You sit and do it for like 10-hour days, a couple years in a row, and it's in the moment. That's how we teach you. It's the best way to teach someone to this exact point. If you sit down with like a book of skills, and there are books like that, and I can point you in that direction as well. Din Steinsaltz has a book, studying Talmud or something like that, where he goes through skills and a little bit of skills. He has like these like charts where you have all the words translated and like phrases. But the real way to learn how to learn Talmud is to do some study, learn the Talmud or whatever it is, learn the thing that you're learning about. One of the things that Gilad and I spoke about when we're starting this podcast. Is we're not gonna talk about Judaism on this podcast. There's no macro conversations. There's no talking about the state of Judaism and how Israel relates to the world. Although we've kind of fallen into a little bit here and there, but generally speaking, we try not to do that. We try to talk Torah itself, the actual Torah. Don't talk about the Torah. So sometimes we have, for context sake, we're talking about how does Deuteronomy sit within relation to the earlier 4 books. That's a little bit macro. Instead of saying, what does Dvarim say? What does verse, the first set of verses talk about? Now, sometimes you don't want to do that. You say, you can read the text on your own. Let me give you context. So you can go deeper. But that's also still studying. You're learning the Torah just in a more, the language has changed, but you're learning the Torah itself. We're not talking about macro trends in Judaism, Ashkenazi, Sephardi, whatever, like these kind of things.
Right.
Does that make sense? Go ahead.
So one of my favorite musicians, and I don't listen to a lot of his music, but he's one of my favorite musical philosophers. He's a bass player. He teaches at Berkeley. His name's Victor Wooten. He's a very famous bass player, and he's very famously part of the Wooten family, who are an incredible, I think they're like 4 or 5 brothers, all of them just monstrous musicians. And he talks about like the idea of learning and teaching music, and he says something very interesting. Like, what's the best? We're all the best at a certain language, and it's the language we were brought up speaking. And if everyone had the same kind of patience teaching anything that they have with teaching their kid how to speak, which is just allowing their kid to speak and speaking to their kid, everyone would be so much better at everything that they do. And he talks about the fact that when he was the youngest of his, I think, 4 brothers, and one played keyboard, one played drums, one played guitar, and well, they needed a bass player. And it was an interactive process as opposed to, well, this is how a scale looks, and this is how a chord looks, and this is harmony, and this is rhythm. And basically, I feel like and like if I may be so bold as to like try to expand on what the rabbi was saying is, when someone wants to learn Spanish and we don't tell them open a dictionary. We say converse in Spanish. Like the best place to learn Spanish is either in Spain or in Latin America. The best place to learn Hebrew is in Israel, because then you're being spoken to in Hebrew and not being taught Hebrew. And existing in any study, and this is something that I try to like tell my students when I'm teaching them guitar, is you can do the homework I give you, and you can also not do the homework that I give you. Have the guitar in your hands. That's it. You will grow more as a musician with the guitar in your hand than with it not in your hand, no matter what you're doing. I happen to be blessed with a fairly good memory and a pretty good ear. I probably spent the first 2 years on guitar playing the same songs. But I still got so much better because I was playing them over and over again and falling in love with them in new ways. And now this time it's the chords, the next time it's the picking. After that it's an inversion of the chords and it's singing with the song, and as opposed to just playing the song. And nobody taught me to experiment, because that's exactly what experimenting is. Getting acquainted with something is the experiment. So you can have mentors and you can have teachers who are but existing in that space where someone is talking Yiddishkeit with you, as opposed to teaching it to you, I think like I probably learned a lot more at home with my dad talking about the ways of the soul than I learned in the classroom talking about who said what to who in which Mishnah. And I think both of them are very important, but I think that living it as opposed to being taught it is a very big thing.
Now, I will add on to that is that you do need to learn skills at the same time, right? Because this essentially becomes a very interesting. Every time you speak out one, you remember, but don't forget the other one's critically important too.
100%.
Right? If you never learned how to pick a guitar properly, then you'd have this challenge. Or I can't yet. One day play a chord, right? I know what they are. I know exactly how they're supposed to sound. Meaning, I can hear if it's being done wrong. But I can't play a chord. And that is a skill that needs to be shown to me. Hold my fingers down correctly, etc. Help me on a thing, or even on a piano, right? I know theoretically where the chords could be. I have friends who are able to pick a chord, but naturally. But I need to be shown that. So you have essentially this challenge where you need to have a top-down teaching. You need to have a bottom-up teaching. A top-down blending of God's oneness with the world, and a bottoms-up blending of God's oneness with the world. An example of this, just a one-off example, is, do you know that God is one? Because you understand that from the Torah, because the Torah says it and made it very clear, and it's this understanding, this tradition that we have that God is one, and then you go out into the world and you go and see places that you can translate that and manifest that. Or do you know God is one because you have explored and examined the world so deeply that the world itself tells you that God is one? Like Hashgacha Pratit, God's manifesting in every single thing. Is it because you know that God is divine providence, being involved in every single thing? Does that come because you know God is one, therefore God has to be involved in everything? Because otherwise, how is God able to be omnipresent and omnipotent? It must be that God is being involved in everything. Or do you know that God's divine providence because you see it in your life? Is it from the top down, this knowledge piece that you have to then absorb into the world? Or is it a bottoms up thing that you see from the world that then you're able to understand that this is a truth? There's somebody that I study with nowadays that he has come to a lot of conclusions of Jewish wisdom and Jewish knowledge entirely and only from examining the world around us. And when I study with him, he's like, it seems to me that, I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head. It seems to me so obvious that this and this is true. Even like the idea there's a single one God. There's not more than one God. He's like, it just based on using logic and examining the world and seeing how everything talks to each other. There's one system. It's not multiple systems. Physics is true across all parts of the world and in every discipline. Whether it's chemical physics or electrical physics, the same rules apply to everything. Tells you there's one system that was put into place, and you go deeper in that. Is it God? Is it a personality? That's already you have to think about. But there's definitely a divine cause, which is a basic philosophical way of exploring God. He came to that conclusion basically looking at the world. Then he comes to me and he says, "What does Judaism say about this?" And I'm like, "Oh, I think Judaism says there is one God. Yeah, that's probably true, right?" Which is fascinating, and we have a lot of these conversations. And he goes through all these different other things, more deeper things in Judaism. And he's like, it seems to me that X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, that's how Judaism looks at it. But I know it primarily from the Torah, top down. And then I apply it to the world. And he comes at it from the world and sees how the truth came from the world itself. This melding of the above and the below. Go ahead, Jeff, you want to say something?
Well, I was gonna say, do you think if you didn't have the background that you had, that you would find the same way from looking at the world?
I wonder
from the bottom up.
I wonder the same question all the time.
We'll never
Or another
know.
way to ask that question is, if I was born non-religious, would I be religious today? Would I have come to the conclusion that I should become religious in Chabad, etc.? Right? Should I be a Lubavitcher? I like to think to myself that the answer to that is yes, 100%.
Right.
But I have no way of knowing. And I hope that the intensity and the integrity of my mind and the way that I follow my values, I would hope that the answer is yes. I also know that there's a thing called laziness and not hypocriticalness, but like, I know it's true, but like, do I have to actually do it? Like, it exists in everywhere, right? Like, you know, it's important to go exercise and be healthy, but like, you know what I'm saying? You know,
if we get a minion,
I think I'll run a mile, maybe. Actually, a few. You know, like that kind of, like these things. Like, so I like to think to myself, yeah, 100%, not even a question. I would bump into Judaism and I'd be like, wow, it's so amazing. And then the next morning I would start working on the process of becoming religious. But if we're being honest, I hope the answer is true. I like to believe and tell myself the answer is 100% true. Like, yeah, yes, I would do that. But it's a tough question.
Yeah.
And I think so this top down, bottom up, this kind of constant bringing the two together, and there's benefits to having a top down approach, because having a top down approach means that there's more revelation of godly energy. There's a benefit to having a bottom up approach because it's more integrated with the below. In the same way, teaching, the more the teacher talks, the more clear and obvious and true and correct and the right way of doing things it will be. But it's not integrated with the student or with the child. But the more integrated with the child, there's a benefit there, but it's more confusing. It takes longer, and it's not as, and maybe they can't level up their skills. So you have to have both. You have to have both aspects, the bottom up and the top down, bottom up. Always going to have both. One way of looking at this, one way of saying this, is to say, are we bringing the world up to God, or are we bringing God down into the world?
Both.
Are we elevating the world or bringing the world up to God, or are we bringing... So both are kind of true. It's this question of, is it top down or bringing God down in, or is it top down and therefore we have to bring ourselves up to God, and then we meet God on His place in His world, which is top down? Or is it from the bottom up, which means we bring God down into this world to make this world holy? It sounds counterintuitive a little bit, right? Top down means that we have to bring ourselves up. Bottoms up means that we have to bring God down here. But think about it. Bottoms up means that we're integrating this space, our lowly space, which is to bring God, integrate God all the way into this. So our space, in our own way, on our own terms. So every mitzvah and every Torah is going to have this. Or in English, the Torah that we have, the first 4 books of Moses, is God speaking in His voice, in His way, telling us what to do. Deuteronomy is the first time that a human is talking. Yes, it's part of the 5 books, but it's a human speaking in a human language, human style. Even though, yes, it is God's word, and every single word in the Torah God dictated to Moses, but He's dictated to him after Moses said it in his own language. Every single word in the 5 books we look at to the point that a missing letter teaches us a whole new raft of laws. Is it a Moses word or is it a God word? It's a God word, but who did it come through? It came through Moses. Was it prophecy? It was more than prophecy. Deeper than prophecy. But it's Moses' language. It's couched in the first term of I. And I told you, and then I said, and then I didn't say, and then I went, and I was frustrated with you. Frustration, Moses. It's all his voice. Because we want to have in the book of the Torah, that is supposedly entirely top down, we want to give one section that echoes this idea of a bottoms up relationship. In the oral tradition, we have the same thing. First of all, the oral tradition versus the written tradition is the same idea. Oral tradition is God speaking to us. The written tradition, the Torah, is God speaking to us and giving us words and letters and language, exactly what you should do. The oral tradition is us, humans, struggling. We don't know what the law is here. How do we apply that? Is it this way or is it that way? Oh, we have an argument. How do we decide? How do you have an argument? I thought everything comes from God. Well, it went through humans. Someone forgot something. Or it's an edge case. The world itself is not in line. If the world automatically adjusted to whatever God said, you'd never have an edge case. God said, Shabbos starts when Friday ends, when the sun goes down. Okay, there would never be a thing called twilight. The world would adjust. That 1 second it's dark, 1 second it's light, the next second it's dark. A certain point you hit, Shabbos starts. Tonight is Shabbos. Shabbos starts exactly at 8:36. I think in New York it's 8 something, 8:15. That's it. Suddenly Shabbos starts. In the world that we have, which is a messy world, the sun goes down, Shabbos starts, but it's not nightfall yet. It's almost fully dark, which is how you have this idea that Shabbos starts at one time and then next night it ends an hour later, 45 minutes later. Why does it end so much later? Because on the inside, going into Shabbos, we start with sunset. We say Shabbos starts immediately with sunset, sun goes down. But when we say that Shabbos is ending, it ends with nightfall. There's twilight. Twilight is in between. Twilight is this gray zone. We don't know if it's day, we don't know if it's night. If the world adjusted to the word of God fully, it automatically snapped to the grid lines, like you have in when you design things. You can design things with like a snap to grid, and boom, it just pops over to the next thing, right? If the world adjusted to God instantaneously, then it would make sense that the minute that the sun goes down, it's dark. That way you have a clean break when Shabbos starts, Shabbos ends, and everything is simple. The world doesn't do that. There's a lot of things that the world suddenly, because we're in a physical world, and because the physics of the world, and because we've technology, and because we've changed things, because we've developed things, suddenly we have new questions. Oh, what about electricity? Is it Shabbos or not Shabbos? Oh, what do we do if we have lab-grown meat? Is it meat or is it considered something else? Is it considered like a mushroom? All these questions come from the world, a complicated world. Oh, woman says, I thought my husband died and I remarried and turns out he isn't dead. What do we do? These are serious questions, right?
Tough one.
Someone says, I tried to kill my neighbor and I killed his friend instead. Do I get the death penalty or not? Questionable. Oh, I mean, I'm just giving you crazy radical examples, but the idea is that the world's a messy world because it's top down, bottom up. The oral tradition is where we figure out, using world techniques and terminology, answers to these questions. Oh, Shabbos starts with sunset, ends with twilight. How do we know? We have 3 verses like this, and they tell us different things, and we end up with still, at the end of everything, twilight is a time we don't know exactly what it is. If you're born in twilight, you technically have 2 Jewish birthdays. If a boy is born on a Friday night in twilight, if they're born on Shabbat, they have a bris 8 days later, even on Shabbat. If they're born on Friday, like Jeff, you and I, we share a similar a child that was born on a Sunday, but we thought might be born on a Shabbat. I was ecstatic about the idea of it because it was so cool. If our sons, each of them had been born on Shabbat, then they would have had a bris on Shabbat. That's what it says in the Torah. On the day of the 8th day, no matter what. But if your child was born on Friday night, if your child was born on Friday, again Friday, 8 days later it's Friday. No problems. If your child was born during twilight on Friday evening between sunset and nightfall, because we don't know what the actual day is, the circumcision of that baby is on Sunday a week later. Because you can't, Friday is too early. What if the kid was born on Shabbat? Mm-hmm. But you can't do the bris on Shabbat because what if the kid was born Friday? And a late bris is not allowed to be on Shabbat. So you do it on Sunday, which means it's technically, depending on what number, how you're calculating it, either 9 or 10 days after the kid is born. Mm-hmm. Which just goes to show that twilight remains as a strange thing. We don't know what it is. We don't know if it's Friday, we don't know if it's Shabbat, it's like this in-between. And in fact, if you want to get into like late medieval conversations, there's a third option. One opinion is that two options. One is that we don't know if it's Friday or Shabbat. And the other opinion is that it's actually its own time zone. It's a twilight zone. And twilight zone, like the TV series, Twilight Zone is a strange place. It's both, it's neither. It has its own law, and we treat it separately. It's not a mix of Friday and Saturday. It's twilight. It's on a mix between Monday and Tuesday. It's twilight. It's its own little zone. It's very short. 20, 30, 40 minutes, and that's it. It's a twilight. But that's already, interesting.
I feel like this book, like Deuteronomy, is the twilight of the Torah.
In a certain sense, it is. Correct. So in Judaism, we're going to have these little mini twilights to create these blends. In everything that we have, in every top-down approach, we're going to have a little echo to the bottom-up approach. Mm-hmm. And in every bottom-up approach, you're going to have a little echo to the top-down approach. In general, Torah and mitzvot, Torah is top-down. God speaking to the Jewish people, listen to my wisdom. Mitzvot is us, our devotion for God. Well, guess what? In Torah, you're going to have top-down, bottom-up, which is written Torah, oral Torah. In the written Torah and in the oral Torah, you're going to have top-down, bottom-up. In the written Torah, the bottom-up piece is Deuteronomy.
Okay, so maybe this is a meta question, but what is, if we're thinking about top-down versus bottom-up, which one's chesed, which one's gevurah?
Top-down, I would say top-down is chesed, bottom-up is gevurah, but I could be, if I think about this.
I agree.
In the macro of Torah study and prayer, which is related to teshuvah, which is related to gevurah, Torah study, which is chesed, which is top-down, God speaking to us, and gevurah, or bringing ourselves close to God, is bottom-up.
Mm-hmm.
I like that.
Which is interesting because raising ourselves up is in a certain sense, it's an echo of a top-down approach is when we raise ourselves up.
Right.
So we could even say that
but they create
a bottom
the platform for each other.
Or in other words, a top-down approach from God causes us to respond in the opposite. If God is heavy on the top-down, we're going to be bottom-up. We're going to respond to gevurah. God is chesed, we're going to gevurah. God is going to be gevurah, we're going to be chesed to respond to it.
I think they feed into each other. And
Right,
I can use an example as of like of songwriting to like people like, how do you write a song? And we've spoken about this a couple times. I used to say that the way I write a song is that I don't understand how to write a song, and that's my starting point, and I'll find a way in. And recently I've come to the conclusion that my new answer is I have to believe myself first, and then a song, like something has to happen where I'm like, ooh, I just got excited by something, and then from there something will usually happen. And the reason I feel like that connects to like the bottom up, top down stuff is you and I had a conversation about where people have less or more of an issue with Lashon Hara, in which communities, and within those communities, which people specifically. Lashon Hara being speaking ill of each other, where in a lot of communities it seems to be the biggest struggle, like gossiping and talking ill of each other. And in some communities, it seems to be like, why are we spending so much time on this? This doesn't seem to be a big issue. And I think that's a great example. And the answer to that is a great example of how the top down and the bottom up are intertwined, whereas if someone's filling their mind all day with productive, spiritual, whether it's productive in their job and they're creating a service to humanity, whether that be, writing songs that soothe the soul, or creating the next, med tech startup that'll cure the next generation of an illness that we have yet to discover, or studying Torah, if you're filling your mind with realizing your spiritual and inner potential, you're taking your mind away from the boredom or the availability to even be thinking about what Joe Schmo has or doesn't have, and what his wife looks like and what she's wearing, and so on and so on. And therefore, even in your vacant time, when you're not there studying Torah or writing songs, or you're going to be thinking about writing songs, or you're going to be thinking about studying Torah. And you studying Torah is bringing yourself closer to God, but you not studying Torah, but still thinking about studying Torah, that's God coming closer to you. In my mind, it's like you've created the platform for something to be coming to you. Like if you are passively consuming Torah by just like existing it because you spend 9 hours a day studying it, and you spend the remainder of the hours a day that you're not sleeping contemplating what you've just learned, not by choice, by circumstance. That's right. That's top down. That's him coming closer to you. That's chesed. That's compassion. When you're in the Beit Midrash and you want to go out and it's too crowded and the air conditioning is not working, and you staying there and studying, that's you bringing yourself closer. That's working hard. That's gvura. And they create the foundation for each other, because when you're at home and you have a dream about the Rebbe coming to you because you've been occupying your mind with good thoughts and holy thoughts, you wake up the next day more motivated to go closer because it came closer to you, and so on and so on. Which
yeah, it definitely feeds in. It definitely feeds. Yeah, it definitely. Yeah. Not a question. And just to and to your point, the whole when our Jewish day is meant to be. We never, almost never do we say today's a day for Torah, tomorrow's a day for prayer. We say pray and then go learn and then do tzedakah and go work in the world, which is either by making money to give tzedakah or by helping people. Like, working is interacting with human beings. Mm-hmm. There's a very powerful not an extrovert, but a very powerful interactively involved with the world type of thing. And that every day has to have one of the above, all the above. And just to close out the loop, because we went down one path, one branch, I want to walk back the branches of the top down, bottom up. We said written Torah is top down. In the written Torah, you have Deuteronomy, which is bottom up, and you have the 4 books that are top down. In the oral tradition, you also have top down, bottom up. 99% of oral tradition is bottom up, but then you have things that are called halakha Moshe Sinai, things that Moses was told on Mount Sinai, and that's it. They're not written in the Torah, but we know them to be facts on the ground. Tefillin have to be black. Tefillin have to be square. Tefillin have leather straps. They're made out of leather. There are 4 compartments. There's 10 things in tefillin that we don't know from anywhere in the Torah. There's no written tradition, just oral, and we don't have reasons why. This is what God said. Halakha Moshe Sinai. God told Moses on Mount Sinai. He came down and he told us. It's an echo of top down inside the bottom up. And if you follow the train back around to the other side to mitzvot, in mitzvot you're going to have the echo of both. Some mitzvot, which generally is a bottom-up type of experience, some mitzvot are mitzvot that we understand and we do it because it's rational. That's a bottom-up type of mitzvah. And you have mitzvot that are irrational. This is closing the loop. Irrational chok mitzvot are mitzvot that you what do you feel when you do the mitzvah? You feel the presence of God in a top-down fashion. In a mitzvah you're doing, which is generally speaking a bottom-up type of experience. This is the kind of a tree almost. And in every single time you split off the path, you're going to have, again, top down, bottom up, because the whole point is this melding. You want to have as much as possible to bring the two sides together, and you need to consistently have a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And I haven't even, my father-in-law, if he would listen to me talking about this, he would start screaming at me because he would say, you haven't yet explained, and we haven't yet explained. What is the benefit from a spiritual perspective? Why is it better? I've explained technicalities. I haven't explained why is it better from a bottom-up perspective. How the connection of God's energy into the human is more thorough when it comes from a bottom-up, but it doesn't reach to every part of you. Versus a top-down, reaches to every part, but it is not as thorough as deep. And we're not gonna. It's for right now. This is already. I think we've reached the maximum of this path right now. But this is like what we've done today is a very, very big entry point into the conversation. But the depth of it would be the next level of depth, just the kind of the direction, is to talk about. So when we say the revelation of godly energy into the world, it's kind of what you were asking earlier, Jeff. Which one's chesed, which one's gvura? Because the counterintuitiveness. When we say it's top down, it means you have to go closer, which means a gvura thing, which theoretically is the bottom up type of thing. So we have to have this conversation when it comes to learning Torah. Do you learn Torah because you have to? Or do you learn Torah because you love to? But if you learn it because you get pleasure and joy out of it, does that change you? Or is it just an expression of your own personal ego? And if it's an expression of your own personal ego, then is that a bottom-up or a top-down thing? It's probably a bottom-up. So you're learning Torah with a bottom-up energy. Torah is a top-down. You're doing a bottom-up. Is that a good thing or is it a bad thing? There's a conversation to be had there. And the conversation could go even deeper to say, I'll give you language. This is the beginning. There's a thing called bitul b'mitziut and bitul ayash. There's a negation of you, and there's a negation of you. Do you not exist? Or do you not exist, or do you not exist? Do we get rid of the person completely? Or do we get rid of the manifestation of the person's attitudes and experience, but the person at their core still exists, and they're the one who subjugated themselves? Almost like, did you sell yourself into slavery, or were you kidnapped and taken into slavery? If you sell yourself into slavery, at the end of the day, you say, at least I put myself in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
You kind of try to retain a little bit of your own humanity, or your own sense of self. Where if you were grabbed off the street and beaten into submission and thrown into the slave thing, then now it's like you just basically lose your entire identity. Now, in godliness, obviously, it's very complicated because we want to have a close relationship with God, but we also want to emphasize that we don't exist. That God is everything. The Rebbe's brilliance, this hierarchy of top down, bottom up, and emphasizing how each one is its own little split, is the Rebbe's skill over many years. Both showing us this idea how it is split up like that, but deeper, on the deeper level, which we haven't gotten into the depth, is why? Why is it so important? Why is it so important? Do we, again, to the point of the hashgacha, divine providence. Now we can use this, we can say what we said earlier, but with language to understand. Divine providence. Do you understand it because you understand it as a philosophical thing? God has to, be in control of everything in the world because God, it's a faith-based principle number 4 or 5, whatever it is in Maimonides' principles of faith. You have to believe that, of course. Or do you come to it from the world itself? You're out there in the world. You're like, how did it happen? This deal came together and it was last second. It wasn't supposed to happen. And I prayed and it came together. Hashgacha pratit. Wow. Okay. But we have it in two different directions. What is the benefit of one over the other? Why is it better? Is there a benefit that you find it yourself? Or is there a benefit that you come to from a realization from God? Abraham spends many, many years discovering God is one. And finally God talks to him and says, leave your father's home and go out into the land of Canaan. Which I love to always, I think I pointed this out in one of our earlier podcasts. Somehow Abraham knew to travel west and south. He didn't travel to Russia. Right? God says, leave your father's home and go travel. He doesn't go north towards Russia. He doesn't go south to Saudi Arabia.
He tells him El Eretz Canaan. Doesn't he tell him to go to the
No, he
land of
doesn't.
Canaan?
No, he doesn't. No, he says, go to El Ha'aretz Asher Areka, the land that I will show you.
Yeah, Lech Lecha.
Lech Lecha. Go to the land that I will show you. When you get there, I'll tell you. He could have traveled east. Ended up in India.
What a time he would have had.
Somehow he managed to get to the only piece of land that doesn't have any oil. No one knows how. They say that joke about Moses. Moses spent 40 years wandering the desert to find the only place that had no oil. He tried hard. He managed to find a little sliver. But it's funny. It's interesting because there's bottom up. Abraham knew God. And he spoke to Noah and he meditated and thought about it. Bottom up, he was perfect. And then God says, once you maximize your bottom up connection to God, now I'm going to come and change you into a Jew. A top-down relationship, a revelation that you couldn't access on your own. Beyond yourself, transcendent. Or to go to our usual language, infinity and finiteness. You completed every part of the finite. You beat all the levels in the finite world. And now we're going to open up the infinite level, infinite energy.
Beautiful.
And that, my friends, is why Devarim is such an important book. And why the whole book is written in this language. And why it's so powerful. And why it speaks to things of the human condition. I would argue that it talks to the human condition more than the other 4 books. As you go through it, it speaks to things that humans struggle with. For example, temptation. Moses talking about internal mental narratives you're going to tell yourself when you're trying to indulge yourself in things that you know you shouldn't, but you kind of want to. It's spoken about in Hazinu, in Kitete, and the punishments are part of it. Moses is very harsh, but he's like, I have to tell you, I have to scare you, because otherwise you're not going to do it right. And Moses says, fear God, and you have to fear God. You have to love God, you have to love God. Speaking about the human, very much from the human perspective. Again, it's all about, it's a whole different type of relationship with Judaism, with divine wisdom, with God, and with as a master scripture, spiritual document. It is fascinating and very, very powerful. Fascinating makes it sound very cerebral, so I don't want to sound cerebral. It's not fascinating. It's powerful. It's internalized. The way that I would say it, it's a more internalized book, or at least it's open to internalization in a very, very powerful way. More than the first four.
Beautiful. I love it. Is that a wrap?
Amazing. I think that this is I think the way it's going to go with Deuteronomy. In other words,
Okay,
what are the themes of the Torah portion? It talks about here Moshe rebukes the people and tells them to love God and gives them the whole history. I have news for you. Open a Chumash and read it. It's in English. I mean, the ones that are translated. Read it. It's there, right? The stories are there. So now, obviously, this podcast is directed towards the individuals, or that haven't yet started opening the Chumash on their own. But I don't know if there's a story to be told. The general gist of this is Moses opens up the conversation of the Torah portion, where he goes through the history of the Jewish people, where they were. He kind of gently rebukes them, depending on how you want to consider gentle. But he basically tells them, like, you guys messed up a bunch of times, but everything will be okay. And then he begins to tell them, what happened, and here we are in the 40th year, and here's what's happening. And all these things happened over the past years that were bad, and you asked me this, and I told you that, and he goes to the history.
What you're
There are
describing
things that
is
we
the
can
birth.
emphasize in everything, but that
You're describing the birth of
Go ahead.
good old Jewish guilt. Moshe standing in front of the people. He's like, "Remember that time you built a calf? That was crazy. That was crazy how you guys did
what
that."
an idiot, stupid move that was.
Yeah. You
You're
must
nuts.
feel pretty dumb right now, don't ya?
By the way, a lot of it also is like you guys came to me and you complained, and I was like, not again. And then I went and I solved your problem, and then like the next day you complained again. Like, what's going on? And by the way, some of these stuff was their parents. It wasn't even them.
Yeah. Which is even
Everything that
better.
happened
Which
the
is even
first
better.
year.
This is my grandmother, God rest her soul, at her finest, like telling me off for stuff my dad did when he was a teenager, and you remind me exactly of him, and it's like, I didn't do anything. Thank you. This is maybe I'm understanding my heritage so much better right now.
Children are inheriting the sins of their parents.
Exactly.
Not through any fault of their own. It's just you're acting the same exact way. Why?
Yeah. You're up to no good, just like your father.
That's really what's happening the whole way through.
Perfect.
I'm trying to see if there's anything at the end of the Torah portion that's not. No, it's literally he goes through the entire history, straight up, and he ends up the last piece of the Torah portion is wrapping up what we did in two Torah portions ago, Matot and Maseh, where he says, and this is what I told you, that you should these tribes are going to be the ones that are going to lead the charge into Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And then Vatchanan starts to get into more, like I said, it's he starts off historical, and then he starts to go into the, to Jeff, to your point, where it's like, why is he saying this? It is interesting to see what he says, but also the recap is a lot of information in the recap that is interesting to see the perspective, and we hear different flavors of the complaints. We hear a different flavor in the complaints, and we hear a different flavor in the rebuke. Meaning, we get more information. We hear the other side of it. Every time the Torah repeats itself, it's repeating itself with new little bits of information. Not that it's completely like new. And you could sit and do an analysis and say, oh, the whole flavor of this entire thing, it leans more in a direction. But the way that I understand it is it leans in the direction of a humanistical. It's trying to make it more humanistic. It's a human voice, a bottom-up voice within a top-down document, within a top-down wisdom base. And then we continue with the history over the next couple of weeks. A little more history and then philosophy. History, spirituality. History, directive, moral directive, exhortation, things like that. But yeah, that's the Torah portion.
Parashat Devarim.
Amazing.
Touchdown! High energy.
Jeff, thank you so much for joining us. To be continued. This will definitely happen again. And it was an honor to have you as our first
Amazing.
guest on the podcast.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you guys so much.
Shabbat shalom
Good
to everyone.
Shabbos.
Shabbos.
Shabbat shalom.